Hello and welcome to the Football Hipsters podcast, your one-stop shop for all things European football. I am your host, Chris, and it's a show with a difference this week because it's just me and Mr. Welsh. Evening, John.
Evening, Chris.
Just the two of us, as we say. So we're going to do a bit of a different show this week, John. We kind of had a chat about this, didn't we? And we've decided that rather than going through our usual kind of picking out individual games and highlighting them, we're just going to kind of take each league and do a little bit of a summary of the weekend's action and then splice in a bit of chat between us. So we're going to sort of experiment with this. So listeners, if you like this type of format for when it's a two-man show, let us know. And if you hate it, well, let us know, and we'll do our best to sort of cater to your needs, as it were. We should mention off the top our partners, of course, classicfootballshirts.co.uk. Get yourself along to their lovely website and buy yourself some lovely merchandise. And of course, you've got a discount code, CFSAW10, gets you 10% off. Our thanks to those guys, as usual. Right, we're going to start in Spain. We should explain, no Joel this week because I think he's on holiday, isn't he, John, from memory? I think he's away from these sunny shores. And of course no Drew because he is still working. So we'll do our best to pick you through. And we're going to start, as I say, in Spain with this week's La Liga. Right, so where should we begin, John? Let's have a look at this title race first of all. Now, obviously, Joel covered the El Clasico in some great depth with us last time we had a pod. Was it 2 weeks ago now? And with Barcelona winning that game, they tied La Liga at the top of the table on points. So both teams are on 84. Barcelona technically are top because their goal difference is 17 goals better off than Real Madrid's. What have you made of this season? Because I appreciate you and I don't watch as much Spanish football as Joel or many others, but I haven't really been that impressed with either side each time I've watched them. So is there an argument that these are weaker sides for the top two?
I don't necessarily think the teams are weaker. I just don't think there have been vintage performances from either of them this season. You've seen little glimpses at times, but even in the games where you might look at the scoreline and it's been comfortable, whether it be in the league or the Champions League, they haven't performed to their best, either team, I don't think. You look at Barca coming back in the PSG game and scoring those 6 goals. As good as obviously the comeback was and amazing as it was, they didn't play particularly great for a Barcelona team. You'd expect a lot more from them. Real Madrid have, I think, flattered a little bit. I think what Zidane's done with the team has made them a bit more pragmatic, which is, I think is something they definitely needed because they were always, kind of a bit weak defensively. But that's taking away a little bit from their attacking prowess. And, you look at the amount of goals Ronaldo scored this season, it's absolutely ridiculous. But he's kind of popped up in games where he hasn't really played his best either, but still managed to get on the score sheet. So it's this kind of, you've got the flip side of it where neither team's playing particularly well, but they're still winning games and scoring a lot of goals, which is obviously very impressive. And that just comes from that. One, they do have ridiculously good players, obviously, but also that winning mentality, and they always try to win absolutely everything they possibly can. But I don't think any fan of La Liga would say it's been the best season for either two. I think the other side of it as well is, at the start of the season, Sevilla were pushing them both a little bit. Barcelona weren't great early on. Obviously, Atletico didn't start the season particularly well, and I think in the past couple of years, where Atletico had been pushing both the big two, you'd had a much more exciting league campaign and seen much bigger performances because every single week they're being challenged rather than just, if you're Real Madrid, looking at Barcelona's results and vice versa.
That kind of covers the top two, like you say. It's hard to say, isn't it? Because some people say that it's a 2-team league. Other people say, well, it is technically a 3-team league because Atletico are always there and thereabouts. But ultimately, like we said last week's show, it's those top two, and whether they are, like you said, with Zidane, more pragmatic, or with Barca in a sort of state of flux and change, they always seem to be the top two, no matter what situation they're involved in. So it is tough for the other teams. We should mention, of course, both teams were in action this weekend, of course. Real Madrid getting a victory away at Granada. Poor old Tony Adams, he's not having a lovely time there, is he? 4-0 Granada, and they were actually 4 up in 35 minutes, so that was game over. 2 apiece for James Rodriguez and Alvaro Morata. So that saw off Granada, and earlier on in the day, Barcelona picking off Villarreal 4-1. Bakambu had equalised Neymar's goal for Villarreal, but Messi, Suarez and a late Messi penalty sealing a 4-1 victory. So that's the top two sorted. So with that in mind and what you said there about the top two, I mean, what do Atletico need to do? Because they've got, obviously, Cholo Simeone's in charge at the moment until, of course, Inter decide they want to exercise their flexing of muscles and take him away. I think we both agree that will happen one day. He's likely to stick around for the new season with a new stadium. Is that going to be the catalyst for Atletico to catapult themselves in? Because they did win La Liga, didn't they? Was it 2 seasons back?
Yeah, I think it was now, yeah.
So how is it a case of they're going to have to do it more often, than a one-off to be classed as another big side, as it were, as one of the big three?
Yeah, I think, Joel spoke about last week about the TV rights and how Barca and Real Madrid basically negotiate their own deal separate from the other teams in the league and get a bigger share of money. Obviously, they have a lot more revenue, excuse me, anyway from their commercial deals, but I think that will be an aspect that will help not just Atletico but the other teams in the league, the distribution of wealth being a little bit more even. And the big thing you've seen with Atletico is that their performances in the league have improved once they've gone back to that kind of tried and trusted dogged defensive style, hitting teams on the break, letting the other team have the ball. Which at the start of the season they weren't really doing. They were trying to be a bit more expansive, which is, I think, credit to Simeone. He was trying to improve, at least aesthetically, their style of play, if you like, but it wasn't getting them results. So I think going back to what they know will be good. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the summer. Obviously, there's a lot of talk. Looks like Lacazette is going to be there next season. Is sort of the is the news going around, which will be good. That does bring into question, is Griezmann staying? He seems very happy there. He seems quite content, but obviously Man United have come sniffing around him in the past, and he is very good friends with Pogba. Is that going to go through? The one advantage is if they did sell Griezmann, they're going to get a lot of money for him. So, and they've shown in the past, Atletico, that they do invest very wisely. So I think if they go back to what they know and do it for a whole season, then they can really push Barca and Real. And they'll probably regret this season a little bit because, as we said earlier, as many results as Barca and Madrid have been getting, it hasn't been the best performances from them throughout the whole season. So they probably had a better shot at the title than maybe they thought. The only other team, really, I suppose, that kind of came into the question for a little bit was Sevilla.
Yeah, Sevilla, as you say, we'll come on to them in a second. I'll give you one guess what the score was between Atletico Madrid and Eibar.
I would guess 1-0.
Oh, well done. Normal service has been resumed after that 5-0 win last weekend. Back to normal service, Saul with the winning goal this weekend, and good win for Atletico. I think you're right. I think they seem to be a side this year that they just seem a little bit in transition, don't they? And I think when they lose Godin, which will eventually happen because he's not getting any younger. I think I'm right in saying that they've lost their fullback to Real Madrid. I'm sure I saw this. Hernandez. Is it Lucas Hernandez? I think it is, yeah. Apparently he's agreed terms with Real Madrid today. So, that's a crushing blow. He's a 21-year-old and played 13 games this season. He's very much billed as the future. So if you're having your bones picked by your biggest rival, that's got to be a real shot in the teeth, as it were, for them. So, yeah, lots of work for Atletico to do in the summer, for sure, particularly if they do lose their talisman. Let's have a look at the sort of the chasing pack then, if you will, for those European spots. Sevilla, Villarreal, Bilbao, Sociedad. We mentioned Villarreal losing to Barcelona. Sevilla, they've had a bit of a wobble, in light of the Sampaoli news that he potentially could be on his bike. They drew with Sociedad, funny enough, this weekend, 1-1. Sarabia putting Sevilla in front, and Carlos Vela, remember him? Equalising. Suratuza sent off late on for Sociedad. Is it a result that doesn't really suit Sociedad very much in their pursuit? I mean, it looks like Sevilla are going to nail down fourth place now. 69 points in that gives them 6-point cushion on Villarreal. So Sevilla, will they look at this season and think what could have been a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think they realistically were going to get the title. It was always going to be very, very difficult for them. But up until the point where they, it was probably 2 months back when they went out of the contention for it. I think they would have liked to think they could have got third spot. I mean, it's still mathematically possible, isn't it? Yeah, they can still mathematically get third, but I think it's very unlikely. The thing that will be concerning Sevilla fans most at the moment is, as you say, Sampaoli looks like he's going to take the Argentinian national team job, and obviously Monchi has left and joined Roma. Monchi's assistant looks favourite to take over as director of football, so it should be a fairly smooth transition. And if they can keep up the level of recruitment that they were doing previously, which is going to be very difficult, obviously, with Monchi gone, but if they can do that, then they'll have a really good chance again for getting into Champions League again next season. And they're just one of those teams that have good, solid European pedigree. They're not going to win a Champions League, but if they can get far in a competition, and if they ended up in the Europa League, it's certainly something that they would look to possibly winning. But they're just a team that needs to keep building, kind of in the way in the Premier League where teams like Liverpool, Arsenal at the moment, Manchester United have been knocked down a few pegs from where they might traditionally be challenging for the title. Just need to build themselves back up.
It's tough, of course, but they don't have the money that the big three have in particular. It's hard.
That's the big loss with Monchi. Obviously, we don't know how much his assistant was involved. You assume he does still know a lot. It's what kind of database he has that Monchi may have left there on players, because a lot of their profits came through the sales on people they brought in and sold on for big profits that they could then reinvest into the squad.
Yeah, we will of course touch on Monchi because he's been quite busy in his new job this week, which we'll touch on in the Italian section. But the big surprise, I don't know, but 4 straight wins. There was a loss this weekend for Athletic Club, or Bilbao, whichever you prefer, losing to Deportivo Alaves, who themselves have had I would say, pretty successful season given the fact they've just come up. But Bilbao continue to do it with this whole policy of Basque-only players. It's quite an achievement, isn't it, to be 6th in the table based on what they've got, given the fact Aduriz is 36 now and he's hit 15 in 30 this season. Ika Monyain's still there, and Iñaki Williams largely expected that he could move on in the summer. DeMarcos, Suzaeta, Itaraspe, Benyat, Raul Garcia. Would the only kind of issue with this squad be its ageing, isn't it? I mean, only Aymeric Laporte, who's 22, who will probably leave himself, and Iñaki Williams, who's 22. I think they're the only real young players in the starting 11.
Yeah, that is the issue, but I think if you are from the Basque region, obviously that's the club you want to play for, and I know obviously we look at football now completely different. It's very global, but if you go back probably 20, 30 years ago and looked at Premier League clubs, or just before the Premier League was starting, and looked at how far out, sort of distance-wise, most of the squad players were from the actual club's location, it's not actually that huge. It's only since Premier League has come in and the same things happened across Europe that they sort of spread the net a bit more. If you do concentrate on one area, what it means is that you get players in very young who are attached to the club because of its location and because it means something special to them, and then you just concentrate on developing them. So I think what Bilbao have tried to do, and certainly done successfully so far, is their development of young players and improving their technique from a very young age and investing a lot into their youth so that eventually they can break into the first team. How long you can keep doing that for and be at the level that they're at, I'm not sure. At some point they're going to have to, you would think, break from that Basque-only kind of rule that they like to apply at the club.
It's only a matter of time before players dry up, I suppose. That's the worry, isn't it? Definitely the worry. We'll just run through a couple of results. It's sort of mid-table-ish. Deportivo La Coruña losing at home on Sunday to Espanyol. Leo Baptistao and Gerard Moreno scoring for Espanyol, and Andone getting one back for Deportivo. Malaga winning 3-0 against Celta Vigo, which will come on to them in a second. Javier Ontiveros, Recio and Sandro Ramirez. It's the late game on the Sunday, 3-0 for Malaga. who I think, are they not managed by Michel? They are, aren't they? I think it's Michel.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, it is indeed. Yeah, so he seems to have got a bit of a tune out of Malaga, who are 4 straight wins, in fact. So they're up to 11th. So they're having a lovely time all of a sudden. Elsewhere in La Liga on the Friday night, we saw the Sociedad games. We've done that one. Sporting Gijón beating Las Palmas by a 0-0. Las Palmas, well, if ever they're as a team on the beach, I mean, wow, they really have down tools. As Joel said last week, I think they're sliding down the table very quickly. But a huge win that for Sporting Gijón, because they're 3 points adrift of Leganes, so it has to be said they've got a game in hand, which is, funny enough, tonight at time of recording against Real Betis. If Leganes win that game, does that all but condemn Sporting Gijón despite the results 1-0 at the weekend, or is there still a chance? I mean, you'd think if Leganes win that, that's going to be enough, isn't it? A 6-point gap.
With the 2 games, yeah, you would think so. I'm just going to check who their matches are against. The other thing as well, I mean, Betis are essentially done for the season as well. They don't really need anything from the game, which can go one of 2 ways. As we said, we talk about Las Palmas obviously on the beach, so to speak, that it's either Betis just can't be bothered, because that kind of happens to teams at the end of the season when they've got nothing to play for, or because there's nothing to play for and there's no pressure. Sometimes you get an amazing performance, so it really depends what team turns up on the night. Just looking at the games here, so Gijón are away to Eibar, and then last game of the season at home to Betis, so not the easiest. Leganes away to Bilbao, and then home to Alaves. So, yeah, actually, I would say Gijón is still in it, because Leganes' games are not easy at all. They're 2 clubs that will still want to win their last couple of games. So, I think they definitely need something tonight. They need to win tonight to really try and keep themselves out of it. Yeah,
agreed. It's a tough one, and that Eibar game is going to be tough in itself. We might just touch on Eibar in a second, actually. Excuse me. Elsewhere down the bottom, I think Granada, that's officially them gone, isn't it now? I think I'm right in saying, or have they still got a mathematical chance?
No, they're gone.
They're gone.
Yeah.
Okay, so the work starts for Tony Adams here, I would guess, if indeed he sticks around, which I guess time will tell. So Granada and Osasuna are gone, out of time, out of place, out of league. Down to the Segunda they go. Other results, Valencia actually won, I know, shock horror. Zico Garay, Simone Zatza on the score sheet, and Rodrigo with Olivide getting one back for Osasuna, as we said, who were gone. 4-1 victory that for Valencia. And the other results, we mentioned obviously the Eibar game between Atletico Madrid, the 1-0 win for Atletico. Just quickly on Eibar, and we'll do a quick bit on Celta Vigo, because they're the 2 teams I want to look at. Just quickly on Eibar, I mean, what a season they've had, coming up from the Segunda. They're comfortably mid-table in 8th position. They've been challenging for Europe most of the season. I'm looking at their squad now. It's not full of household names. There's a few that I recognise there, but it's certainly not household names by any stretch of the imagination. They've even got the lesser spotted Bebe in their squad up front, believe it or not. But Mendilibar, the coach, he's really got a tune out of them, haven't they? Just really, really amazing season for a promoted club.
Yeah, it shows what you can do when you perhaps don't have the individual talent, but if you get things tactically right and the whole team is playing for each other and believes in the system and the manager and who they're playing alongside, then you will go and get results. I think that's like all the leagues we sort of follow. The excitement is, you get the glory ties at the top and everything and all the big name players, but actually sort of mid-table to competing for Europa League kind of spots is generally the real excitement, because sometimes you find some real gems in there, players you've not heard of before, managers who are new to you, that kind of thing, and that's where you get a lot of movement within the league from week to week. So yeah, they've been really good when I've managed to see, as we say, we don't get to watch as much La Liga, but a couple of times I've seen Eibar this season. I've really enjoyed watching them.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to watch at times, definitely in the times I've seen them as well, which albeit is limited. And we'll finish our Spanish roundup this week with Celta Vigo. Sorry, we're going to try and splice some questions in as we go tonight, rather than doing them all at the end. So this one comes to us from our good friend Bobby Chakraborty. He says that can Celta Vigo beat Manchester United on Thursday, as Vigo versus Ajax would be a great final. Vigo versus Leon would be even better, but still. So, yeah, I mean, what hope do you give them? Because everyone ruled out Anderlecht, didn't they, when Manchester United got a draw out there, and they came to Old Trafford, and I thought they were pretty unlucky to get away with that defeat in the end. I thought Anderlecht had some really good chances. Manchester United obviously losing their unbeaten run in the Premier League to Arsenal yesterday. I don't think that will affect them hugely. It's clear that their focus is on this game, and is that what will get them through, or are we just an early Vigo goal away from this going all the way to sort of extra time pens maybe?
I mean, I watched the first leg and Vigo had a couple of half chances. Not really, to be honest. Manchester United probably should have won the game by a lot more. They controlled it, the tempo, they had possession. They didn't take the chances that they had in the game, and were it not for some, very, very good saves from Vigo's keeper, then it would have been more in the game, and it would have been done by now. It would have to be a very different performance from the first leg for Celta to turn up. To be fair, they put out a very weak team in the league and have been doing so for a while, to see how far they can get in the Europa League. I don't know. It's difficult. You need to get a very, very big performance out of players like Guidetti and Iago Aspas, who I don't think showed their best in the first leg. So there's still a chance because it is only 1-0, but I still think United should be comfortable in the game. They rested 8 players, I think, at the weekend. Were changed to the squad. So yeah, I still think United will go through. It'd be cool if Celta managed to do it. It'd be a decent comeback. I know it's only 1-0 down, but just for the way they performed in the first leg, it'd be a big performance.
Yeah, agreed. And we'll come back to we'll splice in the Europa League and Champions League games in between. So just very quickly, we should mention Atletico and Real Madrid. Any chance at all for Atletico Madrid? It's potentially the final Champions League game. Well, it is the final Champions League game at the oh goodness me, their stadium's completely the Calderon, of course. It's a 3-0 aggregate. Ronaldo, obviously, with a hat-trick in the first leg. Any chance at all? I mean, I just can't. I can see Atletico scoring more than once, which is a change, but I can't not see Real Madrid scoring, and I don't know. I just can't see Atletico turning this round. Can you?
No, I think the way the game's set up, speaking to Joel about it, obviously it was a surprise, the result. We didn't expect it. Thought Madrid might win the game, but not in the way they did. They really dominated Atletico and got in behind the defence far too many times, which was really surprising. I just think the game set up perfectly for Madrid because they don't have to do anything. Atletico have got to come out, which is not the way they want to play. It doesn't suit them. I don't think you're the best out of their players, and that just leaves space for Madrid to run into. Which is perfect for when you've got Asensio, Benzema, Ronaldo, Bale, Isco. The list of players is ridiculous. So, I can see them scoring maybe 2 goals, but I just think Madrid will score 1, and then that'll be it. Side done.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and they certainly need a big performance from sort of Griezmann or Carrasco or Camara.
Yeah, Griezmann was very, very poor in the first leg. I was really disappointed with him.
Almost one-dimensional in that game, wasn't he? Dropping very deep, just trying to cut in, and it didn't work. So big test ahead. Do you see Simeone there, by the way, next season? Because I think he was at his lowest ebb, wasn't he, after that final last year? And I think he said it would be hard to come back from it. I mean, it's got to be crushing when you just get so close every year and then drop out. I mean, do you think this? Do you think he'll still be there for that new stadium, or is the lure of Inter maybe that bit stronger?
I think the contract offer's basically on the table for him, and it's a lot of money. And there's a talk of the list of names that are being sort of banded around at Inter at the moment for signings. It makes it an exciting prospect, but I do think he has a lot of affection for Atletico, and I think he still wants to see in the new stadium, just for that first season, to make it a bit more comfortable, that transition. We know as fans what it's like to move stadium, and it can be difficult, certainly, to say the least. So I think he'll want to help the club out. The problem with the Inter thing is he basically is in the position that he knows as soon as he's out of a job that Inter Milan will just come and grab him. So I don't think there's any rush for him to join Inter at the moment. They're more wanting him than the other way around.
Yeah, agreed. And I don't know if you've seen the images of the, I believe it's named the Estadio, is it the de la Comunidad de Madrid? I think it's something like that. I know they were going to be calling it, is it the Wanda Metropolo because of the sponsorship? But the images of that stadium look absolutely fantastic. I'm going to go with Estadio La Pianeta, I think is what they're going to call it, like the locals. It's a little bit like Arsenal and Ashburton Grove and Emirates. It's one of those. You can call it what you will. So, yes, looks like a beautiful stadium. So we shall see how they transition when they go there. Right, that'll wrap us up for Spain, I think, this week. Then, as I say, it's a bit of a different show this week. I don't know. Is there a game you've looked at and thought you could be tempted to have a check in?
Yes, Sunday night. All the games seem to pick up Sunday night. They all clash, unfortunately. But Real Madrid play Sevilla. Yes. So Sevilla could put a dent in Madrid's charge for the title. Barcelona are away at Las Palmas, same time kickoff, so yeah, should be good.
Have a feeling that Barcelona might rack up a cricket score in that one, just saying. But yes, we shall see. We're not going to bother with the tables tonight per se, but we'll just let you know where like the key thing are, because frankly there's not a lot of point in going through the whole table at the moment because so many issues are settled. But just so you know, as we say, Barcelona and Real Madrid tied at the top on 84 points, but Real Madrid have that game in hand, which I think they'll actually play this time next week, or Wednesday week anyway. Atletico are in the Champions League spots in third on 74, and Sevilla likewise 69, with Villarreal, Bilbao currently in the UEFA or the Europa League spots, with Sociedad still potentially could leapfrog Athletic Bilbao. And then down at the bottom, as we said, Osasuna and Granada gone, and as we mentioned earlier, it's pretty much looks like, but well, it is between Leganés, Deportivo La Coruña and Sporting Gijón, with the latter likely to be the club to go, as they are 3 points adrift of Leganés, with Leganés' game in hand tonight. So that is Spain done for another week. We hope to have Joel back next week, so normal service will be resumed. In other words, you'll have someone with lots more knowledge than John and I to get your teeth into, so hopefully we did our best there. But we're going to turn our attentions to John's neck of the woods now, and we're going to go across to Italy and this week's SerieA. Okay, first thing I want to say is I really don't like people calling it SerieA. Does that bug you as well?
People pronounce things different ways.
Just bugs me. It's the small things in life. More on commentary later, which will come up during Marseille. I think you know where I'm going with that. Right, so let's have a look into this week's SerieA. So I think we've kind of agreed that Juventus are likely to win the title. I think we've been saying that pretty much since the season kicked off. But controversy this weekend, they had the Turin derby, as Torino played host to the.
It was at the J Stadium.
No, it's a J Stadium. Yeah. You're absolutely right. Sorry, yes. Juve played host to Torino, in fact. And this looks like it was going very much against form for a long time. Adem Ljajic with a wonderful free kick. It was an absolute gem. But then the game turned, didn't it? On the sort of 3 minutes later, Aqua sending off for a second bookable offence when he clearly takes the ball. Any argument from you? I mean, I can understand the dangerous play element. There's a bit of a follow through, but it's just a good tackle, isn't it?
You know, when you see those sort of challenges, you think you just completely lose track of the ball. When I saw it the second time, I was like, oh no, actually it's a perfectly fine challenge. And I can see why they were so upset. Mihajlovic was absolutely incensed, went mad. There was reporters obviously were in the mix zone waiting afterwards, and it's near the away dressing room, and you can hear Mihajlovic going completely insane in the dressing room. Basically trying to tear the walls down, I think, to get at the referee. But yeah, it was a harsh decision, and he shouldn't have been sent off. The weird thing was that Juventus hadn't conceded the shot on goal in the first half, which I think is like the 35th time or something in like consecutive league games at home, which is a ridiculous statistic anyway to have. And they'd really tested Torino, but just couldn't break them down. And Torino's one fault this season had been their defending, and in this game it looked like they got everything perfectly right. And then, gets into the second half. As you say, Leitch scores a really good free kick. It was a much changed Juventus team, as they'd sort of been doing this season after Champions League and before Champions League games. They changed to the back four. Bonucci was the only one who stayed in. Buffon was out of goal. They had Neto in, Benatia. Lichtsteiner came in. Thomas Rincon into midfield. No Higuain. So, really shuffling the pack about. Obviously, still a very strong team. And you thought, wow, Torino were going to get a result here. It would have been the first time in, I think it might be since like the 90s that they've beaten Juventus away or something ridiculous like that in the derby. But yeah, Allegri obviously not wanted to lose the game. They had a 33 games winning streak at home in the league at the J Stadium. He certainly didn't want to lose that. He brought Higuain on, he brought Pjanic on, he also brought on Alexandro. That was also partly to rest Dybala as well, who still had a little bit of a knock from the Champions League game. And in the last minute, Gonzalo Higuain absolutely crushed Joe Hart's dream, because he'd had a brilliant game up to that point. He'd made some amazing saves, probably his best game all season. And Higuain just turned on the edge of the box and got a shot away, and Joe Hart did his best, but he just couldn't get fingertips to it. And he scored an equaliser in the last minute of the game. So, I mean, I think on balance, Juventus probably deserved the draw. The thing that will upset Torino is the fact that they took the lead, rode their luck a bit, and then went down to 10 men. And to concede the goal in injury time is so difficult, especially in a big derby like that. The team that's probably kicking themselves more than anything right now will be Roma, I would imagine, because I said earlier a few weeks ago that this was going to be a difficult period for Juve. They've got the Champions League games, they've got Atalanta away, they've got the derby, and they've got Roma away soon. And Roma haven't exploited the points that Juventus have been dropping, because otherwise we would be talking about a title race, whereas we're just kind of talking about when will Juventus be officially champions. But really good performance for Torino, very impressive, and it's nice as well because May the 4th is anniversary of the air disaster for the Grande Torino side, where the majority of the team lost their lives in the plane crash hitting a mountainside just outside Turin. So it was a nice little tribute to them, and there was really nice scenes of, they do it every year, like most of the town come up and all the players, the whole squad, and Belotti's there leading the sort of remembrance service, and Juventus do nice honours for it as well. Also Torino presented Leo Bonucci with a specialised shirt for his son, who I'm sure some people have seen now. He's famously is a Torino fan. He's not a Juventus fan, so yeah.
And if you have an interest in finding out more about the Grande Torino side and that whole story, if you go to our website, podcast.co.uk, if you click onto the podcast tabs, you'll have to scroll back a fair way all the way back to Friday, the 25th of November. There's an excellent interview with Dominic Bliss that I conducted about his book, which is entitled Erbstein, Football's Forgotten Pioneer, which is all about the Grande Torino side and Erbstein being a pioneer in that era. And you can find Dominic's work actually at the Inside Lefty. So very, if you're a football purist, or indeed hipster, and you want to know more about that story, it's well worth. I think it's around about 45 minutes worth of interview. It's very good. So apologies for the sound quality, because I remember that was one of the times, John, when you were away and I had to record it myself. It all went horribly wrong, but it's a very good interview, so give that a listen. You mentioned Roma. We just touched on them and Napoli as a pair, both getting sort of important, or getting to that stage where it's important results that they basically just have to keep winning. Napoli won 3-1 against Cagliari. Another couple for Dries Mertens included in that game on the Saturday before Juve played. And then Milan were put to the sword by Roma on Sunday night. Edin Dzeko at it again, two cracking goals, particularly good header. El Shaarawy against his former side, even time for a Daniele De Rossi penalty, and of course for Gabriel Paletta to be sent off, standard. 4-1 victory for Roma. So, I mean, is there still a title race? I mean, if Roma host Juve, don't they, in this game?
Yeah.
That's coming up. I mean, if they win that, in theory, it's a 4-point gap. I guess the problem you're going to tell me now is where else do Juve drop points? Yeah,
basically that is the issue, and the fact that Roma, in games where they could have closed the gap, they haven't turned up and they haven't performed. There's some very unhappy people in the camp at Roma at the moment. The game itself against Milan, they were the far superior team, and they played some really, really nice football when we saw all the good things about Roma and what they've done this season, and we saw Edin Dzeko at his absolute best. The first goal in particular, just the way he approaches it, wraps his foot round it, top corner, keeper's got absolutely no chance. Donnarumma, who made some ridiculous saves in the game as well, he just couldn't stop him, and as you say, a really, really good header as well. The issue is that in the biggest games they haven't turned up and performed to the level that they're capable of, and it's been a consistent theme with this team for a long time now. The other stuff that's going on in the background, obviously Monchi's come to the club now, which is very good, but it looks like his first job may be finding a new manager, because Spalletti is not happy, and he's already said, if they didn't win the league or win the Coppa Italia, which they got knocked out of by Lazio quite convincingly, that he would leave at the end of the season. After this game, he was basically saying, I wish I'd never rejoined Roma. If I had a time machine, I would go back and I would never come back to the club, because every time the subject of Francesco Totti comes up and whether he's staying, why he wasn't brought on in games, because he wasn't brought on this one, all these things keep coming up, and he's just so fed up with it, the Totti one in particular. And he feels like Totti's got too much power at the club. It has to be said now that, according to everyone at the club bar Totti, this is not a statement from him, he will not be a player at Roma next season. He has a 6-year contract deal for being a director at the club, but as far as Roma are concerned, he will not be a player. Totti himself has said he hasn't decided what he's doing yet. I think Roma are in a kind of precarious position at the moment, because he has so much sway with the supporters. If he says he wants to play for another season, I don't know if they're going to be strong enough to say no to him, which is a weird situation to be in with a player obviously of his status. But I think it's time for him to retire, and maybe it might have been better a few years ago. But yeah, there's rumours he could even leave the club, which seems ridiculous at the age he's at now. I don't really know what the point would be, but we'll see what happens in the summer. But yeah, Spalletti making some very, very strong comments and just basically fed up with the whole thing.
Yes, it does seem, it's very weird, isn't it? A club that can have had as good a season as they've had, because they have been much better this season. I mean, yeah, ultimately they've come up short again, but when you're facing Juventus, it must be hard to continue being as good as they've been, and it's just bizarre that the fact that they would risk losing so many good players as well. I mean, we've heard, obviously being slightly sort of biased towards our own club here, there's talk that Wojciech Szczesny is going to leave. He's been one of the best keepers in Europe this season, and he's obviously not, or that they feel they can find another goalkeeper, which seems a strange decision. Totti leaving as well. The likelihood of Radja Nainggolan being speculation of him leaving in the summer will be probably out there again. Surely people will be looking at Edin Dzeko, and if they haven't got a manager coming into the season, I mean, that's going to hasten those players' wishes to depart, you'd think, and it just seems like a really strange situation there. But nevertheless, we'll watch with
quick word on Napoli as well. Obviously, they're trying to challenge Roma to get the second spot in the league, which means automatic qualification for Champions League. They don't have to go through the qualifying round, which they've basically failed miserably in. So they will be hoping for Juventus to absolutely drub Roma next week. And it was as you say, very good day for typical Napoli win. Just beautiful football, Sarri football at its best. Slick passing, really nice finishing, great interplay, and Dries Mertens, on his birthday, 30 years old, scored 2 goals to take his tally for the season to 30.
I was astonished when I found out he was 30. I really was. I didn't think he was that age, but he's been reborn in this sort of forward role, hasn't he? So yeah, he's having a lovely old time Lovely old time indeed. Very close goal difference. Only 2 goals in it, by the way, between those two. So that could go all the way to the last day, potentially. And speaking of that, there's this chase in fourth as well between Lazio and Atalanta. You'd think the 5-point gap Lazio have now would be enough. They had a lovely old time, didn't they, on Sunday? Pasting Sampdoria 7-3. Absolutely nuts, this game. I think the red card for, is it Skriniar? Yeah, that guy at Sampdoria. He was sent off in the 18th minute at the score at 1-0. I think Keita put Lazio in front, but from the resulting penalty, Ciro Immobile made it 2-0. Linetti got one back, and then it just all went crazy. Hoyt, Anderson, Stefan de Vrij, Lulic and Immobile again. 7-3. 2 late goals from the Quag, making it somewhat respectable. But yeah, good, amazing result really for Lazio, and that probably cements them, do you think, in fourth with Atalanta, as I say, that 5 points adrift. They drew with Udinese, Cristante scoring for them, but Perica pulling them back against Udinese. So is it Lazio's to lose now, that fourth place?
Yeah, they're now guaranteed Europe. They will definitely be in Europe next season, which is very good for Lazio and for the young team. Whether they get fourth or fifth is still there to decide, but you would expect them to do it. The form they're in, they've been playing really well and just scoring so many goals. And the other thing as well is that Keita been playing sort of more as a striker in the last couple of games, where Immobile wasn't available. He's kind of showed another side of his game. Everyone knew he could score goals, but he was a bit more of a creator. But there's even more clubs looking at him now. So yeah. The list grows on, and Lazio desperately trying to either convince him to stay or at least sign a longer contract so they can get a bit more money for him.
Yeah, you do expect there's a lot of teams in Italy, isn't there, that I think teams are going to look to potentially try and poach players from this summer, which leads us quite nicely onto the 2 Milan clubs who are 6th and 7th in the table this season as we speak. They're doing their own kind of job of who can look worse each week now. It seems to be a playoff between the two. We mentioned Milan getting thumped at home, and Inter once again going away to Genoa, has to be said, played very well. But a 1-0 victory for Genoa. Goran Pandev, who's still playing football, which is amazing. 70th minute winning goal. Jeffrey Kondogbia was sent off for Inter. I mean, changes afoot for both clubs in the summer. Both have got money. Both have got Chinese investors. I think it's safe to say Montella will stick around at Milan, do you think? But yeah, maybe not so at Inter.
I expect Montella to stay at Milan. Losing to Roma, it's not the worst thing in the world. That defence at Milan at the moment is a bit of a shambles, and they've got so many injuries and players suspended that he hasn't got a lot to choose from. As for Pioli, I've tried to defend him as much as I can, but it's getting harder and harder every week. He brought in Andrioli into defence, which I thought was a sensible move. I kind of forgotten about him, to be honest, and he was decent on the day and just solid, no nonsense kind of defending, but. Again, why is Eder playing? He hasn't been the best this season. Candreva had a penalty which was really, really poor, which at least got a point out of it. Gabriel still not getting a run out. Palacio still getting games from the bench, which is just seems ridiculous. Brozovic not starting games. João Mario was dropped again. Just questionable decisions, and they need to change things there. Things looked bright at the start for Inter. Genoa were the better team throughout and definitely deserved the win, but Simeone went off injured quite early on, and Goran Pandev came on around the 20-minute mark, and I actually thought, oh, okay, well, their biggest threat is gone now, so Pandev is a good player, but I'm not expecting too much from him, but he just read a save shot and got on the end of it and scored against his former club, and Genoa really needed it because they were on a huge slide. They were in serious danger of slipping into the relegation places, and with teams around them all winning, it put even more pressure on them. But yeah, Inter and Milan, just two clubs that are very Jekyll and Hyde at the moment, and I think Pioli will be long gone come the summer. If they can't get Simeone, that they'll go and get someone. They need to change the management there, but I can't put it all on him. There's a lot of that staff that needs to go. There's talk of some of the big players that have already come in, like João Mario might be sold straight away this summer, so some players not working out. Barbosa, Gabigol was, as everyone will know him, probably had 120 minutes total football for Inter. again, another one who might be gone and off to Spain, possibly Sevilla, is the talk. So, I mean, I don't know what's happened there. I have no idea if he was just an awful footballer in the first place, or he's just not been used. Everything I read about him in the times I saw him for Brazil, anyway, the sort of highlights, he looked very good, but just hasn't worked out.
No, it strikes you as a team that need full scale sort of surgery, doesn't it? And just on that thought, if they don't get Simeone, which as I think it maybe is a weird one, isn't it? Because the likelihood of them getting him this time next summer, when he's had a year at Atletico's new stadium, is more likely. So what do they do? Do they go for a short-term fix? Gianfranco Zola's out of work. Maybe not, but do they? Because who's going to take that job? That's the way I look at it. I think to myself, like, if you're okay, it's Inter Milan. Obviously, yes, it's a huge job, but how do you feel knowing that basically in a year your employers are going to look to replace you no matter what you do? Because that seems to be what they're going to do.
I mean, it looks like that, and unless you are a huge name, then you're not going to take it. If Spalletti leaves Roma, maybe he goes to Inter. It's not like there's a shortage of managers around, and Inter have certainly got the money to flash at other people. Palasoso at Fiorentina, but do you really want him? Because they're a team who they perform against the big sides but struggle against the smaller ones. There's lists of managers from not just Italy but all around Europe who you could certainly say have got a chance of getting the job. But yeah, as I say, I think if I was going in there, I'd want to know that the structure above me and the playing staff is going to be sorted out first and changed somewhat, because that's where the real issues at the club lie, and have done for a few years, to be honest.
Here's a shout for you: 1 year, Javier Zanetti.
Oh yeah, I'd take that all day long.
Just for 1 year, because he's. He can do no wrong, can he? He could get into relegated and nobody would care. They'd still love him, so, and rightly so. Or Nelson Vivas. He's had a fun week, hasn't he? He's been. In fact, could you imagine a fight between Nelson Vivas and Mihailovic? Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
Wow.
That would, yeah.
For anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about, just Google or go on Twitter and search Nelson Vivas Estudiantes. He manages Estudiantes in the Argentinian league. They drew 0-0 with Boca Juniors, and to say he took exception to a few of the decisions made would be slightly an understatement. I can't imagine Arsene Wenger or Sam Allardyce ripping their shirt off as they storm down the touchline. Can you? I don't think I really want to imagine that, to be honest. Certainly not with Sam. Anyway, enough of that talk. Right, we'll just whip through a couple of other results in the weekend and maybe just have a look at the bottom end. So Sass and Fiorentina drawing 2-2. Good game there. Another goal for young Chiesa. And indeed a 90th minute equaliser for Bernardeschi, who I think will court some loving eyes from around Europe this summer. The brilliantly mentioned Lamelo scored for Sass, as well as Politano penalties. That ended 2-2. Bologna losing 3-1 to Empoli. Big result that for Empoli, which we'll touch on in a second. And also on the Sunday, Chievo 1, Palermo 1. We'll touch on that in a second. And Pescara 0, Crotone 1. Huge result there for Crotone potentially on the Saturday. So just wrapping up our talk in Italy this week then. Pescara officially gone. Palermo now, hallelujah, officially gone. I don't know if the manager's gone already, but I'm sure he'll be on the way out as well. So they are officially back to Serie B. Crotone fight on. Unbeaten in 5 games now. Another win. Could they? It's weird, isn't it? We said Empoli were falling apart all over the place, and since we said that, they've won 3 out of 5 and have suddenly found form. Maybe because they knew they had to.
Yeah. That was the big thing. Empoli were better than the results they were getting. Bologna, nothing to play for. Again, just kind of given up. The season's done. Genoa were on the slide. They conveniently had the perfect team to play in Inter Milan, who gave them a win, because otherwise they would have been in real trouble. But yeah, Crotone keep fighting, and I can see this going. There's 4 points now, so it could go to the last day of the season. I don't like seeing teams relegated. The only saving grace I will say about Palermo going down is that I don't have to check every single day as to whether they've sacked their manager or not. Interesting thing from the Pescara-Crotone game, or more for Pescara, Salimentari's ban has been overturned thankfully for the sending off he got from the for the racist abuse and not appearing on the pitch. Unfortunately, the club have not been so sensible. He wasn't picked for the game because he didn't stay on the pitch to help his teammates. So sadly, his club haven't backed him. So yeah, as we said last week, the league needs to do certain things, and sadly, it seems Pescara need to readjust their attitude on certain things as well, because it's not something you really want to see.
Yes, I think you're right. At the end of the day, it's prehistoric viewpoints like that make the game still stuck in the dark ages at times. So we certainly hope that sensible heads prevail on that one in the long term for the club and the player, of course, as well. Picking out a game for next week, then, which one is it you want to keep a lookout for?
There's two on Sunday. 2 o'clock, Torino host Napoli, which should be good. Plenty of goals in that one. And Roma host Juventus in the evening. That's the 7:45 game. Just quick transfer news as well. Frank Kessie from Atalanta looked like it was all done deal to Roma. 24 million euros, I think it was, something like that was the price quoted. Now looks like he may end up at Milan. His agent's been talking to Milan, and looks like they've come in and sniped the deal, and apparently, according to rumour anyway, that's his preferred destination. So Roma are not happy at all.
Give me a figure how much Inter and AC Milan could spend between them this summer.
Between them? Oh wow. I would say north of 200 million euros.
Could be a very busy season, couldn't it? Yeah, it really could. And when you think of how many, what I would call big teams, we'll touch on Bayern Munich in particular in a moment, there's so many of Europe's elite that need to strengthen this summer. It's going to be potentially a busy window. So
whenever there's not an international tournament as well, it's generally a busier summer, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, good point. Of course, I forget we've got a bloody World Cup next year, haven't we?
Mm-hmm.
Crikey, it comes around, doesn't it? We'll have a quick look at the table then. As we said at the outset, Juve are top 85 points, so seemingly on a charge to their fifth straight Serie A title. Despite 2 draws in the last 2 games, they are 7 points clear of Roma on 78, and a further point clear of Napoli in third, 77. Lazio, as we said, are officially in Europe in fourth. Atalanta, pretty certain they're going to get fifth. Milan could, in theory, still get there, but the way they're playing, it's not going to happen. And then the big names into Fiorentina, Torino, all just inside the top 10. Down the bottom, as we say, Pescara and Palermo officially gone, and then it is a straight fight really between Genoa, Empoli, and Crotone. Maybe Genoa are the ones looking over their shoulders slightly more than Crotone, but than Empoli. But with that win over Inter, hopefully that will put their minds at rest for a little while yet. So that is where the table stands. Right, as usual, we'll be across the Italian action this time next week, and of course go through all the results that we get in next time out. Right, let's transition now into Germany and see what's going on in this week's Bundesliga. Right then, John, I want to start with Bayern Munich because we just mentioned, or I just sort of segued, talking the Italian talk about Milan clubs, what they're going to spend. I want to touch on Bayern Munich because I was listening to a friend of the show. I'll call him that because it makes it sound important. Andy Brasser was talking on TalkSport last week on their European football show about, they had a guest on who, forgive me, I'll have to look up who it was, but he was speaking very, very interestingly about Bayern Munich and looking at their squad, and if you look at, I don't know if you've got it in front of you, but you look at some of the names in that squad, there's a lot of aging players there, and not just aging players, but players with huge reputations that are likely going to have to transition out. When you look at Arjen Robben, you look at Frank Ribery, Xabi Alonso is a huge one, obviously Philipp Lahm is even bigger. There's a few players there, isn't there? Even Manuel Neuer is not a spring chicken. You look at those sort of players and you think this could be a huge summer, couldn't it, for Bayern Munich in terms of who they bring in, who they ship out. there's even talk that some of their bigger players, the Vidals, the Kimmiches of this world, that could potentially look to move on. So is it quite a big summer for Bayern Munich to retransition and bring through the Kingsley Comans and the Renato Sanches as first team players?
Yeah, that's been the one criticism I think of Ancelotti. Obviously, the going out in the Champions League was the biggest one, and losing the cup semi to Dortmund, but he hasn't really given much play time to Koeman. Muller hasn't had a particularly good season. Renato Sanchez hasn't done a lot this year either. Kimmich, I guess, is the only sort of success story in terms of a younger player, but he's just relied on the older heads who know how to get things done. So I don't know if it's a worry necessarily. It could be in terms of the league, possibly depending on what happens with Leipzig and Dortmund, because you'd expect them to be much better next season. But Lahm will be gone, Alonso will be gone. You think Kimmich can come in at right back, shouldn't be a problem at all. He looks very solid and decent player. Midfield, I think, is more of a worry for them. Thiago Alcantara is a marvellous player, and obviously I'm sure he'll be a mainstay for a long time, but is Vidal going to stay there? Will he want to move on? Are they going to include him? Is Renato Sanchez going to be able to instantly impact in this team, not just in the league but the Champions League, in the way that they expect to get the performances? And also the fact that Thomas Müller kind of has gone a little bit backwards this year. I don't know if it's a case of him not suiting what Ancelotti wants, or just having an off season. That can happen for players. But that's been a big concern, because they really only have Lewandowski up front to score the goals. I know they are obviously spread out through the team, but when you look at Arjen Robben, is the second highest goal scorer I think in their side, and he's 33 years old now. How much longer can he do it? I mean, he may amaze us and go another season and still bang goals in for fun and cutting on his left foot, and no defender will ever learn. But it's certainly a worry for them. The one thing you must say with Bayern is that they do always try and plan for the future. There's quite a few players already coming in that they've signed that will be coming from under other Bundesliga clubs that they know have got the experience in the league. I worry a little bit for them in terms of the Champions League, because they are going to lose some serious experience in that team.
Yeah, that's the worry, isn't it? As I say, it's not so much the fact that they are. They are a European powerhouse. Like, there is absolutely no doubt about that, and we all know that. And I'm sure that they will kick on again. Oops. There we go. There's me trying to find this person's name and playing a loud podcast. But I'm sure they'll transition again and they'll go again. But and probably they spend a lot of money. And I wonder if they will raid their rivals, as seems to be the case. They've got, of course, Sula and what's the guy's name? Rudi, haven't they, coming in from Hoffenheim in the summer? So that's two that will come in. It'd be interesting to see who else they take from other clubs. I will get this gentleman's name who I was referring to in this podcast, because he was a very, very good listen. So bear with me, I'll find that in a second. They got a win this weekend, a 1-0 victory over Darmstadt. Juan Bernat with the winning goal there. Borussia Dortmund Hoffenheim, big game this. Dortmund coming out on top with a 2-1 victory over Hoffenheim. It was the game of the week we picked out. Aubameyang and Royce with the goals there. Late clincher really from Aubameyang before Kramaric pulled them back with a penalty. Do you think Hoffenheim would be too disappointed? I mean, Dortmund now leapfrog them in the table. They've got 60 points and going to third. Hoffenheim slipped to fourth. We know Hoffenheim is still, I think they're still Champions League qualified, aren't they? Whether it be a playoff spot or not, that they're in. So will they look at this result and think what could have been, or is it just a little bit of confirmation that they've done brilliantly, but they're not quite there yet?
I think there will be a bit disappointed, because the first goal was offside, and it wasn't by a small margin. It was quite large. Drew was watching the game and talking to us about it, and just celebrated the goal, and then saw the replay back and went, "Oh my god, I have no idea how that stood." Then they had a penalty as well, which Aubameyang blasted over the bar, I think it was. So they had their chances, Hoffenheim. They're not going to complain regardless of how they get Champions League football, obviously, because it's still an absolutely amazing season, and what they've done is very, very impressive. as for this actual game, I think they probably would have been, I think a draw would have been a fairer result. They didn't get their goal till late on, but they had a lot more of the ball than you thought they would against Dortmund. And they had plenty of chances, so they'll be a little bit disappointed, but they'll take Champions League however they get it, because let's be honest, I don't think that's what they would have set their season's goal out as, finishing in the top four. That's really impressive.
Yeah, agreed. And speaking of impressive, RB Leipzig went to Hertha BSC 4-1 victory. They took Hertha apart. Hertha are in danger of doing exactly what they did last season, being impressive for most of it and then dropping away when it really matters. They are right on the edge of not qualifying for Europe again. 3 defeats from their last 4 games. 2 goals from Werner, 2 goals from Davy Selke in that game, an own goal from Rami Khedira, who is indeed the younger brother of Sami Khedira at Juventus, of course. But a good win that for Leipzig.
Hilarious goalkeeping in that game as well for the second goal. It's definitely worth looking that up.
Absolutely nuts. What do you anticipate us seeing from Leipzig next season, particularly in the Champions League? I mean, are they going to be a club that the Red Bull Group plough with money in the summer in an effort to kick them on to that next level again?
I'm really excited to see what happens with them. I hope they keep hold of their players. There's a lot of interest in Naby Keita, Timo Werner as well, and Emil Forsberg. But I think the majority of the squad there, at least, they are very happy under Hasenhüttl. They like what they've done and what they've achieved. I saw an interesting interview with Emil Forsberg where he said that at the start of the season their goal was to get into Europe. They're very pleased that they managed to get second, and there's almost a little bit of disappointment about them that they didn't push Bayern harder, which really shows how much belief they've got in each other, in the system, in the club, the way everything's run there, the way they fight for each other. So I'm really excited to see what they can do. Obviously there's the young Scottish lad Ollie Burke as well, who hasn't had the most playing time this year, but I hope to see a bit more of him next year, and also see what other gems they uncover, because they seem to have a really, really good scouting network, and the talent they seem to pick up that other clubs just haven't spotted for whatever reason is always really good. So yeah, I mean, well deserved winning this game, and again, we already knew that they were going to be in Europe, but this guarantees that they are in the group stage of the Champions League, regardless of what happens at the end of the season. So yeah, again, amazing season for Leipzig. I know they're not particularly liked in Germany, but very impressive what they've done.
Yeah, still have to take your hat off to them, don't you? Absolutely. By the way, the gentleman I was talking to or mentioning about was Jonathan Harding, who's at John Blogs with 2Gs 66 on Twitter. If for all of you Bundesliga fans, he's an excellent follow and certainly knows his onions. So he's worth looking up. A little bit of Bundesliga news. Clemens Fritz, remember the name?
Yes.
Yes, retiring after 11 years with Werder Bremen, 6 years of those as a captain. That's impressive, isn't it? Amazing. He's going to stay at the club as some sort of ambassador, or he's going to do something for the club, basically. But that's an amazing amount of service in the modern era, isn't it, for a player who's just been around and done it all. So he will be sorely missed. As for his team, Werder Bremen, they lost the big European potential playoff in a thriller on Friday night. I don't know if you saw this 4-3 result for Cologne. Another couple of goals for Anthony Modeste in that one. But yeah, 4-3 victory for Cologne, halting the juggernaut that is Werder Bremen this season. So do you back Cologne? Because I think with Hertha's form, I think Cologne are going to be the team I would back to nab that 6th spot, because we'll come on to Freiburg, who've been incredible. They're currently in 5th. But I have a feeling that Cologne and Freiburg will be the two that will end up in those European spots. Whether Freiburg are ready for it or not is another question.
Yeah, Cologne have been really impressive this season. Modeste in particular, obviously, has been amazing for them. The goals he scored, all sorts of goals as well. Some of his assists have been great as well. And as you say, Hertha have done their traditional sort of end of season slide. So at the moment, you'd back them to pip Hertha for the European spot. I think they're just a point behind, aren't they? So yeah, shame for Werder, because they were on an unbelievable run. I think they must have been the form team in Europe, the run they were on. was just absolutely ridiculous. And they tried really hard as well in this. They went two goals down, Modeste and Bittencourt, and then brought it back to 2-2. But yeah, Cologne just had too much for them in the end, and it was a really, really good game. But it just shows you the attitude of the Bundesliga of always try and win games rather than we don't want to see out for a draw. You don't often get 0-0s in Germany. There was just the one this weekend, but it's a bit of a rare occurrence.
Yeah, that one we will touch on briefly in a second because that was a huge game. But just talk to you about Freiburg and what they've achieved. I mean, I'm a horrible turncoat. I used to follow Paderborn, but they're so far down the league structure now that it's not even worth it. I can't even watch them anymore. It's that bad. But so I've always liked Freiburg. Mainly because I used to like their kit. Yeah, I know, who'd have thought. But them and Eintracht Frankfurt, there's a pattern developing here. But I mean, what they've done is incredible, isn't it? I mean, it's coming up again from Bundesliga 2. It's a little bit like the story of what do you call them in Spain? The team that come up, Leganes. It's just amazing. Sorry, Deportivo Alavés. Sorry, it's amazing that a team can come up from a league below and just look so comfortable. Not just comfortable. I mean, 5th place in a team that, and I'm looking down their squad right now. I would defy anybody who doesn't follow as much football maybe as we do to pick out any of their players and go, oh yeah, I've heard of him. I mean, it's just Niederlechner is their star. I mean, 11 goals in 32 games. Max Philipp, Vincenzo Grifo. They've got some good players, but none of them are household names, are they? So it's an amazing achievement what they've managed to do so far.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I know like 2 players in their squad. That was about it, and it was Drew talking about them. And just again, if you have good coaching, which they have got under Streak, you're going to go far. And that's why I like the Bundesliga. I like the 18-team league. I think it's much better. It makes every game mean something. There isn't these dull games where you think, oh, okay, you don't really need to put the performance in here. Which, yeah, okay, players shouldn't have that attitude anyway, but it will naturally seep in certain matches. And there's always something to play for. And if you say to a player, you can be part of a squad that can, outperform clubs with huge history, like Gladbach, Schalke, Leverkusen, Wolfsburg, all these really, really big names. You can finish above them. Not only that, you can get yourself into Europe. Not only do you feel proud of the club you're playing for and want to buy into that, but it puts you on the market as a player. And maybe the bigger boys sort of around Europe who wouldn't have looked at you as a player before might go, oh well, Freiburg are doing quite good. Why are they doing good? Oh, because this guy is, in midfield, he's putting in performances, or as you say up front, getting 11 goals this season. It puts yourself on the market as well to hopefully get yourself an even bigger club and maybe a bigger pay packet. So really impressive what they've done. I think there's the slightly advantaged by the fact that some of the big boys like Schalke and Wolfsburg and whatever are being mismanaged at the moment, and they're taking advantage of that, and fair play to them.
Yeah. Whether it would be a good thing for them to be in Europe this season, not sure. I mean, you the last thing you'd want to see is them get into Europe and then, come tumbling down the table next season. But that said, it's a once in a lifetime shot. It's the Leicester story, isn't it? Really, to a lesser degree. So, good luck to them, and a victory over Schalke this weekend, 2-0. Niederlechner with both goals. Delighted for them. We'll just touch on a couple of the results and also have a look at the bottom. Gladbach drawing with Augsburg. 1-1. Andre Hahn with a 90th minute equaliser for your boys. Lovely job. We mentioned Bayern Munich. We mentioned the game on Friday. And in the other game, Eintracht Frankfurt losing at home to Wolfsburg 2-0. Big points those for Wolfsburg. Didavi and Mario Gomez. Who else scoring for Wolfsburg? Ingolstadt drawing 1-1 with Leverkusen. Kittel scoring for Ingolstadt. The stadium went nuts when that went in. And former Hipster's choice Kai Havertz getting the leveller for Leverkusen. And Hamburg drawing 0-0 with Mainz on the Sunday game. It's tight, isn't it? At the bottom, Darmstadt, I think that's officially them gone now, isn't it?
Yeah, Darmstadt are gone now, so they can stop egging us on for all those wins they were getting. Yeah, the Ingolstadt Leverkusen result, the goal from Havertz was huge, because if Ingolstadt had won that was massive for them and would have been devastating for Leverkusen, because it would have kept them in. I think that now that now just gets them out of it, and they should be fine. Okay, there's only 3 points, but there's enough teams sort of sandwiched in between that one of them is more likely to fall before. Hamburg probably will take a draw. It's not the result they want. Obviously, they're still sitting in there in their playoff spot, but it's not the worst result. So they've given themselves a chance. Wolfsburg, though, still looking over their shoulder, which would just crazy to think that there's even a shot of them being relegated. It's amazing.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it? I'll have to look at the fixtures coming up, but I think Ingolstadt will go. I think that 4 point. I think if it's 2 points, you'd say yeah, but 4 points.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be a little bit too much for Ingolstadt. I think I'm right in saying, is it two more match days left in Germany, or is it 3?
2 more match days. Yeah,
2 more match days. So Ingolstadt go away to Freiburg next week, and then at home to Schalke. I mean, that's 2 pretty daunting fixtures for both of them. Hamburg are the ones obviously in the relegation playoff spot at the moment. They finish up with an away trip to Schalke and a home game with Wolfsburg. I mean, that's not exactly straightforward either. Mainz are the team above them in just clear of the relegation zone. They finish at home to Eintracht Frankfurt, away to Cologne, who we've already mentioned are chasing Europe. There is a pattern developing here. Wolfsburg in 14th, 36 points. You'd think are safe. They host Mönchengladbach and then play Hamburg. Imagine that having something riding on it at the last game of the season. And then if we go up as high as Augsburg, if they're level on points with Wolfsburg, they play Borussia Dortmund at home, and then they finish with Hoffenheim away. You've got to think that they may not get anything from those 2 games. So it's all very close.
I think it's the Hamburg Wolfsburg game.
Yeah.
That could be it. That would be really interesting, especially if Mainz managed to get a win and sort of just say, well, I'll just leave it to you two to scrap it out.
Yeah. Could this be the season we finally see the end of Hamburg in the Bundesliga? It'd be sad, but I don't know. It's a tough one, real tough one. I say we'll try and get Drew back on before the end of the season. Hopefully, if we can try and cram him in either next week or the season it's finalised, then we'll do our best, because it'll be really interesting to see how it all ends up. Okay, a game tickle your fancy next week of the fixtures we've got available? I suppose it's probably going to be down the bottom we're going to be looking at.
For me, Gladbach against Wolfsburg, because Gladbach still have a slim chance. It's very slim of getting a European spot. I think it's unlikely, to be honest, but the hope is still there, and obviously Wolfsburg need a win, so that will be the one I shall be watching. That is the 2:30 on Saturday. In fact, all the games are 2:30 on Saturday.
They are, yes. Yeah. I was just going to say, and I will be personally keeping an eye on that Freiburg-Ingolstadt game, because it's got obviously repercussions at both ends of the table. So, yeah, I'll be having a look at that one. And Mainz-Frankfurt, a big game that for Mainz, as you say, to try and pull away. So, yeah, there's a couple of big games. That Augsburg-Dortmund also is quite a big one for both ends of the table. So, plenty to get your teeth into as far as Germany goes. We did actually have a question, I think, on something German. I'm just quickly scouting down here. Or maybe I've just made that up. Maybe I've just made that up completely. So please ignore me. I think I've just made that up. We'll come back to that. I know we've got a question in France, though, and that's where we're going next. So we'll leave Germany behind, and we'll transition into this week's Liga. Right, I'm gonna, in sort of a change of play, I'm kind of going to host this week's Liga, and we're just going to have a natter between us, because I know you know enough about Liga. Should we start with the top end of the table?
Sure.
Obviously, we had that big result for Monaco, didn't we, last week, where PSG got humped at Nice, and Monaco took advantage of that. I'm still fairly confident Monaco will win the title. They got a 3-0 victory this weekend over Nancy. Badillia with a hilarious own goal, to be honest, in the 3rd minute. Bernardo Silva and Thomas Lemar getting the second and third goals. So that gives Monaco that 3-point cushion still. And don't forget, with a game in hand. PSG destroyed Bastia, more on them in a second, 5-0. Did you see the quote-unquote controversy in this one?
Yes, I did. A certain young Italian man named Marco Verratti did something questionable, shall we say. I think it was Matuidi who went down injured?
Matuidi went down, yes. And
yeah.
The goalkeeper, Jean-Marie Lecca, was checking him out.
Well, yeah, it was kind of confusing because Bastia looked like they were trying to kick the ball out at first. Then a Bastia player looked like he was attempting to keep the ball in play. And then you thought, oh, okay, they've put the ball out so Matuidi can get some attention because the goalkeeper's down trying to either get him to get up or at least help him, and he's sort of waving over to the sidelines. Then PSG take a quick throw in. Half the Bastia team are sort of standing around wondering what's going on. Verratti looks up and goes, oh, thank you very much, and has a shot. It's a brilliant goal, and the shot is fantastic. It's really, really good, but it completely catches the goalkeeper's kind of unawares. He's a little bit unsighted as well, and can't make the save. I think it's fair to say PSG would have won anyway, quite comfortably. But yeah, it's a little bit morally dubious. I think the fact it's against Bastia, people probably aren't questioning it that much. PSG kind of poo-pooed it a little bit and said, oh, it's fine, it's still a goal, Bastia should be playing to the whistle, that kind of thing. But yeah, Marco taking full, exploiting any chance he can to get a goal. Yeah, okay. I'm going to say it doesn't bother me just because Bastia have been a bit naughty this season. So apologies if you're a Bastia fan, but I think you were going to lose anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it would be fair to say that it was a little bit naughty, but it's one of those that... It's
a great strike of the ball, though, still. It's very, very good, the way he hits it.
And it doesn't change the result of the game. I mean, I think it's unlike the Juventus situation with the sending off for Aqua, where it really changed the game pattern and ultimately the scoreline. I think this was never really... Bastia were never in the game. Even at that particular point, they were never in the game. So, it doesn't really sit brilliantly, but I can I can understand why people are not that bothered about it overall. More goals for Edinson Cavani, of course. He continues to troll me. Just on him, in all seriousness, I mean... you know that I beat the drum for Liga and I love watching it, but even I can be realistic and accept the fact that Liga is the fifth tier of leagues in Europe, behind obviously England, Germany, Spain and Italy. But should we be taking Edinson Cavani's goal rate sensibly? I mean, you have to say some of his goals are against very weak opposition, against defences that are not the best, and his Champions League record is not bad, and he has still got goals on a consistent basis. So, are many, including me, wrong to mock the fact that he should probably have scored 60 by now, or should we be celebrating the fact that he's 40 goals plus in all competitions this season and has stepped out of Zlatan's shadow, if you will?
I think his finishing could be better. There's no question about that. You look at what he did when he was in Italy. His finishing was, I'd assume his percentage was higher anyway. It certainly seemed that at the time, sort of his finishing rate. But the one thing you cannot fault is his movement. If there's any young kid who wants to be a striker, the one thing Edinson Cavani is brilliant to watch for and learn off. His movement off the ball is superb. It really is second to none. There's other players. Falcao, I think, when he was at his peak, was another player who did this, who just found space and just timed his runs perfectly and always called for the ball in the right position. There's a young man at Monaco, Mbappe, who seems to certainly have a really good reading of the game as well. Obviously, he's got a long way to go in terms of his development, but no, I still think it's very impressive. Yeah, there's the obvious argument that some of the goalkeepers maybe are not up to the same level as others, and the defences aren't to the same level. But you still have to put yourself in those positions. You still have to finish the chances. Could he take more? Yes. Do I think he'd get 40 plus if he was playing in one of the other leagues? No, but I think he'd still be pushing near the 30 mark. I think he'd still be doing close to what Dzeko and Belotti and others are doing in SerieA. I think he'd, if you put him in Real Madrid's team, he'd be 30 plus, I would imagine, the season with the players they've got there and the movement he makes. Barcelona, all those sides, put him in the Premier League team, I'd imagine he'd probably be fighting for top goal scorer, goal on boot in the Premier League. So he's definitely got the ability. I think Zlatan leaving has been a big thing for him, because I think he was always in his shadow, and even when he got those chances to play up front, I think he always had that kind of in the back of his head that he's not the man there. he isn't the main striker to get all the goals. So I think Zlatan leaving has really helped him.
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see what business PSG do in the summer. I think everyone has largely accepted that Unai Emery will lose his job. I think that's pretty much widely accepted. Patrick Kluivert is under serious pressure to potentially leave his job as sporting director. I think that could change. And if those two go, I think the playing staff, again, lots of talk from those who know. Once again, Andy Brasser is another one that has mentioned this. I think that there could be some big names at tumble in the summer. I know Marco Verratti is courting the two big clubs in Spain. Thiago Silva is a big name that's likely to move on. Marquinhos is potentially going to move on. And it'll be very, very interesting to see if PSG can sign a centre forward that wants to join them, but no, he could be second choice to Cavani, ironically, because there isn't many around that would want that sort of task. I don't think so. It's can they find? I think this is where the Alexis Sanchez links come in, because you could sign a player like that who can play wide and then still come in up front when needed. So in other words, he's still getting the games, but can play in two different positions. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens at PSG. Yes, another quote-unquote super club that will be very busy in the summer, me suspects. But that's them, and that's Monaco. And as we say, Monaco remain top with their victory at the weekend. Nice, however, didn't have such a good weekend. They fell to Marseille, who are finding form just at the right time, up to fifth now. A very rare winning goal scorer, Patrice Evra. Stooping low to get the winner after Gomes had put Marseille in front, only for Super Mario, who took out Florent Thauvin earlier on, forcing Ligue 1's Player of the Month to go off injured. But this game, as much as anything, will be remembered by me for a certain piece of commentary. So those of you outside the UK, you might not have got the joy of this moment, but the UK commentator, I'm sure is somebody Scott, I think his name is. I could be wrong. But as you, I'm sure, will all be aware, Marseille have a player called Rod Fanny. Yes, I know, childish jokes. But at one point in time, he loses the ball, trying to break out from defence, and the commentator says, quote unquote, well, he's tried to run the ball out of defence, and his fannying around has really cost him there. Which, you know, I mean, I don't know whether he got disciplined by his employers for that, but if you're listening, sir, that was fantastic. I fully endorse such pieces of commentary, so brilliant. But yeah, Marseille, I mean, they're looking all right, aren't they, under Rudy Garcia? I mean, another club that we expect to have major surgery conducted in the summer. But they've done well, haven't they? Considering, I remember talking to you earlier on the season where they were, you know, well, an absolute mess in mid-table or even lower, and now here they are knocking on the door of the Europa League. So, would be quite an achievement if they could make it, wouldn't it?
Yeah, a really, really impressive turnaround from them. I think, you know, a lot was put on Payet coming in, but I actually think Evra coming into the team has also been a big boost, not necessarily for his performances, but just for what he brings to the dressing room and the experience he's got. He's obviously not a huge favourite in France with some people, of fans of the national team anyway, aren't too keen on him, but I think he does bring a lot of experience and know-how, and could just be a boost for some of the younger players in that squad. And Payet obviously has been a big plus for them. The little was it the no-look pass that led up to the cross for Evra's stooping header. So yeah, really big for them. Nice, the season was kind of done. They knew they weren't going to win the title. They got their Champions League spot. They've still had a very impressive season, and nice to see Mario, you know, on the score sheet again. He went through that little dip and a couple of suspensions and stuff, but come back strong. And no winding players up this week though, which is always sad to see.
Yes, yeah, bless him. It's a three-way shootout, isn't it, for that Europa League spot? I mean, Lyon were in action. They got a walkover, we should say, a 3-0 walkover of Bastia in that game, of course, that was marred by all the violence and from the crowd, etc., from 2 weeks ago. So that was a 3-0 win awarded to Lyon. So I mean that boosts their chances. They've got 63 points. So you'd think Lyon should be secure for that Europa League spot, with Marseille, they 5 points adrift, but it's a straight shoot between them and Bordeaux for fifth place, isn't it? So have you been impressed with anything you've seen in Bordeaux? I mean, they're again a side that are coming back to form, having had so many years away from Europe's top table. It's kind of nice to see a grand old team like that coming back. They got a 2-2 draw with St Etienne this weekend.
Yeah, I think it's impressive because it's so difficult. Liga, it is. It doesn't mirror, say, La Liga in certain terms, but there's two teams at the top who have a lot of money, or at least Monaco did have a lot of money. They don't obviously spend as much now, but they can if they need to, and obviously PSG can vastly outspend everyone else, and everyone below them is kind of scrapping a little bit. Lyon traditionally have got more funds. Marseille did for a while. Obviously, they hadn't. Do again now. So, what Bordeaux have done is really impressive. It's a case of how much can they build on it. And again, as we always say, sort of when it comes to the summertime, how many players will be poached from Liga and from those teams that have put in these impressive sort of runs and got themselves into Europe, and those key players that might get pinched out of the side and go to the Premier League or La Liga or SerieA, wherever it is. Because there is always so many good young French players. But Bordeaux have been impressive. I did see a report that they're going to challenge the French FA's ruling for that game against Bastia.
Yes.
And they want to take a court case for it, which is very strange. But yeah, I guess it's having probably the weirdest thing that came out of that 3-point award is the fact that Bastia didn't get docked any points at all.
Yes, yeah. That's a huge point, which I do want to talk about. Actually, we should say Lyon got a 3-2 victory over Nantes. A very good game, actually, that Fekir, and a couple of goals from Max Cornet in that one. So Lyon keep up the pressure and indeed the gap to that Europa League spot. But we should talk about the bottom end, as you rightly say. We've got Bastia, as you say, without or having no points docked is a huge thing, as you rightly say. And it basically means that we've got, I mean, I would argue 5 clubs for 3 spots now. You're looking at Bastia, 31 points and bottom. They actually have a game in hand. Sorry, no, they don't have a game in hand because that's a Lyon game. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong table. I do apologise. So they don't have a game in hand, but they've got 31 points, 32 points Nancy above them, 33 points Dijon above them, 35 points Lorient above them, and Caen 36 points above them. Caen had a massive win this weekend. Cannot emphasise how big a win that is away at Toulouse. Santini, who else, got the winning goal after Caen were on a horrible run. So that probably gives them a breathing space. Metz also got a massive victory away at Lille by 2-0. That makes them, I think, pretty much safe in 13th now. Lorient played Angers, which ended in a 1-1 draw, which probably sees Angers safe on 40 points. And Montpellier losing again, but you'd think that they're going to be safe on 39. So looking at the results here, Dijon and Nancy this weekend both losing as well. Nancy losing, of course, to Monaco, and Dijon losing 4-0 to Guingamp, absolutely humped. Do you think the 3 that are in those spaces now, you got the 2 automatic relegation spots are occupied by Nancy and Bastia, and Dijon are currently in the playoff spot between Ligue 2 and Liga, between who comes up and down. Do you think that'll be the 3? Do you think Lorient and Caen will just about squeak it, or is there still a chance for the underdogs or 3 underdogs to get out of this?
I mean, I think Bastia have been so bad this season that I can't see them turning it around. They've got obviously a huge game with Lorient, which I think if Lorient get something out, even a draw, that I think that pretty much will relegate Bastia, to be honest, because their last game was away to Marseille, which you can't see them getting anything out of that, surely. And just looking through the other teams here and who they've got to play, it's so difficult.
Dijon play Nancy next weekend.
Yeah, which is huge. Everyone else will be saying, just nice draw. That'll be fine in that one for everyone else in the table. And who have Caen got?
Caen have got. They're at home to Rennes and finish away at PSG.
Yeah. So I mean, if they can get something out of the Rennes game, then they should be fine. So you would think, as it stands, then I would say the only team out of the bottom 3 that are currently there is Dijon. Have got a chance if they can beat Nancy. I think if they don't get a win out of that game, then they're probably gone. Because I expect Lorient to at least get a draw against Bastia. I know it's putting a lot of faith in your boys because of the performances they've put in this season, but Bastia have been so poor and they're so ill disciplined that I think they're a team that's easy to exploit to get a result out of.
Yeah, agreed. Just to cap it, so as you say, Bastia Lorient, huge game next weekend, as indeed is Dijon against Nancy. It's weird when the bottom four are playing each other in the same weekend. Marseille, as you say, finish with Bastia. As for Nancy, Dijon Nancy is of course the game. Nancy finish with St Etienne at home, which you'd think that would be a tough task. Dijon hosting Nancy and finish with Toulouse away. Which they could get something out of that. And then Lorient, as you say, away at Bastia, they finish at home to Bordeaux, who could by then either be guaranteed sixth or fifth spot, or or not be. They could be fighting for Europe. So that'll be tough. That'll be tough indeed. So yeah, it's all getting very close, isn't it, with Liga as we speak. And we did actually have a question in, which I must get to, and it was actually sent to me by email. So I'll definitely give this some time. This one comes from Chris H. Thank you very much for the question, Chris. He wants to say, if you were picking the French national side for Russia 2018, let's assume Dimitri Payet is the left-sided attacking option, who would you have on the right? And he's given you three options: Anthony Martial, Kingsley Coman, or Thomas Lemar. Who do you select and why? Do you have a view? I know who I'd pick. But would you pick one of those three? Or if not, I know it's a year away, so it's so hard to tell with form. But is there anybody else you'd have on that right-hand side other than those three?
Out of those three, as it stands right now, I think I picked Thomas Lemar. Just on the performances he's put in, especially in Europe at the moment. I don't doubt the others. Kingsley Coman hasn't really played a lot this season, but I know he's a wonderful player, and I think Anthony Martial as well is actually very good. And this weekend, for the brief periods I sort of thought in the first half in the Man United against Arsenal game, he was really good and showed what he can give. And I'd actually prefer to see him playing as a striker. There's so many other players in France that so many young players that can play those positions. I think I'd stick with Lemar for now, but come the time of the World Cup, there'll probably be some other young superstar. I mean, you're not talking about Ousmane Dembele at Dortmund, who obviously has been great and had a fantastic season, can probably play that side. Kylian Mbappe could play quite comfortably from a wide position as well if you didn't want to play him up front. Griezmann, if you're not playing him through the middle, the list goes on and on, doesn't it?
Yeah, if Fekir is fit by then, he can play in the wide roles or as a number 10. So, yeah, I mean, there is, as you say, there's an absolute boatload of players who could come in there, and France are spoilt for choice, with regards at that sort of position. And if all else fails, they can just put Francis Coquelin in there and do a lovely job. Quick sidebar, actually. We talked about Carlo Ancelotti earlier on. He's at the Chelsea game this evening, sat with one Andrei Shevchenko. So maybe he's looking to reinforce Bayern Munich going old school. Quick sidebar for you there. But yes, good question there, Chris. Thank you very much for that. And we, of course, encourage any more questions. We did also have one from another man who follows French football, but he's asked me, this is a question in general, so we'll save that one for the onion bag itself. Okay, I think that kind of covers us for France this week. Is there a game that you look at? I suppose it's got to be one of those two big relegation games, isn't it? Next week?
Yeah, either of those two at the bottom. They're both huge games, so either one of them. Whether the quality of the football will be superb, the excitement will be at least. Yes,
both kicking off at 8 o'clock UK time, as indeed all of Ligue 1's games for the rest of the season do now, on a Saturday night at 8 o'clock. So you'll be able to follow along. I think BT Sport is showing one of the two. I'm not sure which one, but if not, you can get them on popular betting sites. But don't gamble, kids. It's bad for your health. Right, okay. So that is Ligue 1. Just very quickly, the table. Monaco, as we said, top. 3 points clear of PSG with a game in hand. Nice cemented in third. We've mentioned the chase for Europe. Lyon, Marseille and Bordeaux. And then down at the bottom, as we said, it's that straight shootout. Bastia, Nancy, Dijon, Lorient and Caen. Notable other clubs. Guingamp up to 9th with a 4-0 win this weekend. Nantes and St Etienne at 8th and 7th. And as you said, Metz probably safe with that victory this weekend. Work to do for the incoming Marcelo Bielsa at Lille, methinks.
Mm-hmm.
If indeed he doesn't turn his plane round in midair like last time. I just have visions of it like comedy fashion, a plane just screeching to a halt in midair and turning around and going back the way it came. But should he continue to take the job he's been offered. Busy summer for Lille as well. Right, okay, so that'll do us for France again this week. As usual, if you've got questions, ping them my way. I'll do my best to answer them, and if I don't know the answers, I shall damn sure find somebody who does. And indeed, we'll cover those big 2 games at the bottom next weekend. Right, okay, let's take a little trip now into another area, or another areas of interest from the week's games, as we have a look at the best of the rest. Okay, just a very quick whistle-stop tour of Holland, first of all, / the Netherlands, depending on which way your bread's buttered, because John, Drew's Feyenoord are doing their very best Inter Milan impression, aren't they? They're on the verge of bottling this title. How on earth it's come to this? Absolutely nuts. But they seem to be secure. They seem to be everything seems to be going well. And then this weekend they lost 3-0 to Excelsior, which is just an absolutely bonkers result. Excelsior, has to be said, 4-game winning streak. They've been brilliant, but they're done 11th. Meanwhile, Ajax took apart Go Ahead Eagles 4-0. A goal for Justin Kluivert in that game as well. Another one for Kasper Dolberg as well. So 4-0 win. So what that basically means now is going into the final game of the season, Feyenoord and Ajax are separated by a point. So it's all got very close all of a sudden. The final fixtures, and going into the final weekend, Ajax are away at Willem II, and Feyenoord host Heracles. Do you still think that Feyenoord will get this title? It's one of those, isn't it, where a goal the wrong way early on, and it would be really nervy, wouldn't it? The goal difference, by the way, +5 in favour of Feyenoord.
They should be fine, and you would expect them to get it done. Both teams you would expect to get wins in their last games, but there's when you have been so comfortable for a large section of the season, it looks like you've comfortably wrapped up the league, and then at the last minute, all of a sudden, there's a wobble. The doubts just creep in. So, I'll be keeping a close eye and seeing what the scoreline is, because, as you say, if Feyenoord did somehow concede an early goal, then the doubts creep in and you start making silly little mistakes that you wouldn't normally otherwise. So, it'd be interesting last day, but I still think you still expect them to pull it off.
Yes, yeah, and I'm sure Drew will be happy they pull it off after that. I don't think anyone saw that coming this weekend, so a real shock as far as those games went. We'll just check in very quickly on Portugal as well, because obviously that is coming to a climax. It looks like Benfica have done enough. I think was there 2 games to go in Portugal? I think I'm right in saying, or is there 1 game? No, I think there's 1 game to go in Portugal, and I'm pretty sure that Benfica have wrapped up this title. I'm just frantically checking because what is it, a 18-team league? I think Benfica have won it. Is that right? I'm frantically checking. They won at Rio Ave this weekend, 1-0, which puts them 5 points clear of Porto. What's 2 17s, John? You're better at maths than me.
34.
Sorry, 2 games to go. There you go. They aren't. Crikey. Look at the preparation that went into that, boys and girls. Long day, Monday morning and all that. But yes, so basically what that means is if Benfica win their next fixture upcoming, which is this weekend when they host Victoria Guimarães on Saturday night, if they win that, it's all done and dusted, basically. Mm-hmm. Victoria Guimarães are 4th, so it's not easy, and they've won 5 on the bounce. So it won't be an easy game. Porto host Paços de Ferreira, who are on a less good run. They have won a couple for the last 5, but they lost last time out. They're in 12th. So Benfica's title for you?
I would expect so. Vitória, they're a decent team, but they don't really have anything to play for. There's the very, very slim hope of them for possibly getting in a Champions League qualifier spot, but it's extremely unlikely. And their Europa League spot is safe and secure. So I'd expect Benfica have got enough, to see this over the line.
Yes, indeed, yeah. And also another very quick whistle-stop tour to Turkey. Just going to look at the top here. It's a straight fight out between 2 clubs, Beşiktaş and Istanbul Başakşehir. who I don't think we would have. Excuse me, I don't think that's just me trying to say it. I don't think we would have expected them, would we? I mean, they're ahead of Fenerbahce, who are third.
Mm-hmm.
4 games left in Turkey, I think I'm right in saying. Besiktas 2-point lead over Başakşehir. So amazing, isn't it, to think that the Başakşehir have gone this far this season. They won 1-0 away at Antalyaspor this weekend, whereas Besiktas only managed to draw with that big game against Fenerbahce, which I'm sure was a nice quiet affair. Not 1-1 draw. So 4 games to go. Besiktas,
you would still, I think, back Besiktas just for the experience and the quality you got in the team. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all getting very close. So lots of leagues wrapping up around Europe in the coming weeks, so we'll try our best to keep you across them. But before we end the best of the rest this weekend, we've had a DM come in, John, from our good friend Pete Kennelly, who messaged me at the weekend, and he said, could we have a bit of love for the Australian A-League? And I said, of course we can, Peter. You send me a report and I shall read it out. So here goes. So he wants us to know that Sydney FC are the new A-League champions after beating their rivals Melbourne Victory 4-2 on penalties after being locked at 1-1 after extra time. Sydney, who'd only lost 1 all season and clearly the best team in the country, fell behind after their prolific striker Bezat Bashira's 20th minute opener, but responded midway through the second half through their right back of all people, Ryan Grant. The result was mainly helped by FC's 2 best players of the season, goalkeeper Dani Vukovic and playmaker Milos Ninkovic, who is a very good free kick taker, by the way. And the former saving a penalty with a brilliant one-handed stop from Ninkovic, who was crowned player of the season during the week. And he coolly stepped up to score the forced penalty and winning penalty in front of, get this, 42,000 fans packed into the house at Sydney Football Stadium. That's maybe a glimpse into what clubs that tour Australia in the summer will be in for. And the match was full of high passion and intensity, matched by the atmosphere created by the fans. Not exactly the best quality match this season, but nothing short on drama. So Sydney FC, the new A-League champions. So
congratulations. Indeed.
Growing sport, isn't it? Over in I think it's mirroring MLS in the fact that both Oz and the US are trying their best to sort of build a bit of a niche for soccer and
yeah, I know there's a big Premier League following, and I think Liverpool went out there. I can't remember what it was, but I'm sure they had something like 80,000 people turn out to watch a game, which is amazing, really, when you think you get that many people into the stadium. So big, really, really big following for football over there, and yeah, it's just one of those things. It takes time to develop and build the talent pool up and the coaches and the sort of the infrastructure for the sport. So yeah. The longer it goes on, the better. Yeah, absolutely, and of course our thanks to Pete Kennelly for sending in that review. Thank you, Pete. We appreciate that. And if, again, as we said all these weeks before, if you follow a league that is full hipster or you don't think gets coverage, or you want to mention random club you follow, whatever league, if you want to write us a quick report, just send us a DM and we'll read it out. So get in touch, people. Get in touch. Okay, so that wraps that sort of things up. Now, we should say at this point, there is no Hipster's Choice this week. I know, boo, rasp. Mainly because myself and John are obviously the only 2 in-house this week, so we thought we'd get some more questions answered instead and just have a slightly shorter show this week. So no Hipster's Choice this week, but we will be back next week when we've got Joel back in tow. So tune in for another Hipster's Choice next week. So, John, we're going to finish with some questions and what's left in this week's onion bag. Right then, let's have a look and see what we've got. We've got a couple of good ones here, so we'll do our best to answer these as per our tweet earlier on. This first one comes in from UZ at Mr. Arsenal 93. He said, after seeing... No, that's the wrong question. Let's try this one. Who has been the most underrated / overrated players this season in the major leagues? He says, for him, underrated, Valère Germain, I agree with that. Roberto Soriano, agree with that. Dries Mertens, I think you'll agree with that. And Kramaric at Fiorentina. At Hoffenheim, isn't he? Sorry. Yeah, I always get those two confused. Who's the lad at Fiorentina? It depends who you're talking about. Chiesa, there's loads.
the ex-Blackburn...
Kalinic?
Kalinic, that's
yes.
the one. I get the itches confused. His overrated players this season: Memphis Depay, hard to disagree. Andres Iniesta, That's a big call. Candreva, who he describes as the Italian Downing.
Oh.
And Javi Martinez. I quite like Javi Martinez. So some mixed opinions there. So
wow.
We don't want to go through all the leagues, but are there any players that immediately jump out at you?
Underrated, I would say Skorupski, the Empoli goalkeeper. Empoli obviously not had a particularly good season, but he looks very, very good, very impressive. I don't expect him to be there next season. I think the talk is he might be Roma's replacement for Szczesny. I know they were looking at him. Also, oh god, I've got to get the name. No, Conti at Atalanta, the wing back. Really, really impressive. Got a lot of goals this season. But in that Atalanta team, not spoken about as much as, say, someone like Papu Gomez. As for overrated, oh wow, that's
tough, isn't it?
I'm trying to. I hate being harsh on certain players. Kevin Strootman might be one at Roma. I think he's had a good season, but I think he's perhaps been a little bit overhyped in their midfield. I think they might have done a bit better had they played Leandro Paredes a bit more. He would certainly be one. There's a lot at Inter Milan.
yeah. Joe Hart, maybe. I mean, he was rewarded, wasn't he, as the signing? And
at the start of the season, he certainly was, and he's had some big errors. I don't think the defence has helped in front of him, but yeah, he's been a little bit overhyped. He's probably the biggest one, but Inter Milan, Candreva, to be fair, is a decent shout because he hasn't performed to the level that you would expect. João Mario as well is another one at Inter who I don't think has put in the performances that he's won his price tag and some of the praise he's got has deserved this season.
Yeah, it's difficult. Can you think of any from the leagues we don't follow? I mean, I'm trying to think in France how many. I mean, I would argue there's a few at PSG that have underperformed. I guess is the obvious one.
Thiago Silva and Marquinhos would be two. I would shout out there straight away.
Hatem Ben Arfa, of course, although arguably he's not played, so I suppose that's a little bit tough on him. Krychowiak, hugely disappointing. Again, not played, but there's a reason behind it. I'm trying to think. Any in Spain or Germany that you can think of?
So I'm trying to think. In terms of La Liga, maybe Bale a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree with that. 100%.
He suffered with injury, which has obviously hampered him a lot. But he hasn't been his best season, which is amazing when you consider he basically won them 2 cups last year.
Yeah,
with his individual performances he put in.
Arda Turan at Barcelona as well, largely disappointing.
Yeah, I think.
And what's the guy from? Is it Andre Gomez they signed from Valencia?
Yeah, a little bit harsh on him because I think they overpaid for him. Certainly, I don't think Rakitic has had his best season for Barcelona.
No.
But this is evaluating players to the standards that you expect for a Barcelona or Real Madrid player to achieve. So for any other club, it's probably fine. Thomas Müller would be the obvious one from the Bundesliga. Has been awful. But I think the guy who sent the question in, Kramaric, is a great shout. Hoffenheim will do really, really well to keep hold of him because he's had a superb season.
Yeah. And one extra shout, and I know you're not going to like me saying this, Marco Reus. I think he's massively overrated. Just based on, don't get me wrong, he's a fabulous footballer. I'm not for a second suggesting that. But when people talk about him being a Real Madrid player, I laugh. I don't see it. I just don't think he's at that elite level. I think Dortmund's the perfect club for him. But I'm really not. And the injury record, I mean, you can't overlook it, can you?
Yeah.
As far as underrated, I think Dembele. Ousmane Dembele, definitely. I mean, I know he's rated highly, but I still think he's underrated to the level he's at. I mean, Kylian Mbappe at the start of the season, given what he's gone on to do, I think would be fair. The 2 fullbacks at Monaco, there's a lot of players at Monaco you could say were underrated at the start of the season. Presnel Kimpembe at PSG comes to mind. Anyone at Freiburg, I think you would have to say. Equally, Serge Gnabry? He's been very underrated since his move. He's been exceptional. Any others in Italy you can think of? I mean, we could go on for hours, but
I think we'd go on for far too long.
it's just hundreds of thousands. But
Yeah.
it's a great question, and as usual, again, if there's a player that you think we've missed, then please do let us know. Who's it by the way that shouted out? We said about last week about players who'd be MMA fighters, and somebody, was it Tom, come back to us and said
Thomas Gravison, didn't
Thomas
he?
Gravison,
Yeah.
Little shout for last week for that. So, yeah, if there's players from the leagues you follow that you think we haven't mentioned, tweet us and we will try and mention them next week or retweet them or give you some love on Twitter. So, yeah, it's a great question. Could go on for hours. Let's have a look at this one. Rob Holding FC, no surprises who he follows, at JMaj01. I think it's a new follower, actually. Does the EFL deserve more TV airtime? Do you think there'll be a lack of interest compared to the big leagues of Europe? And then there's a question he asked to you as well. Name your five-a-side team from SerieA. That's a cracker. So EFL, first of all, I mean, obviously Ross and Josh are the two to bang the drum for this one, but it's a very entertaining league, isn't it? Do you think it would get coverage? I mean, if it was shown in Italy, do you think anyone would watch it, for example?
I think if people enjoy football, they're going to watch it, but the brand and the style of football is very different. It would. I don't even think it gets enough coverage in the UK, to be honest.
I agree.
It used to, I used to enjoy watching Match of the Day, and then you'd have the EFL coverage afterwards, straight after that, and you don't get that anymore. I think it's like.
It's on Channel 5.
Yeah, Channel 5 at like 9 o'clock or something, which in the UK is on a Saturday night. It's a weird time to have it. I think it should get more coverage because it's, the size of some of the clubs and the history of some of the teams that are in the Championship and lower is absolutely ridiculous. You think obviously you had Newcastle down there this season, which is an absolutely huge club. They're basically they've got Sunderland and Middlesbrough. They're two sort of closest rivals, but it's a one city team, if you like, which is a bit of a rarity, especially in England and throughout Europe. You've got Nottingham Forest, Leeds, all real big giants of the game. Derby, obviously, who obviously under Clough did amazing things. I think it would be popular. I think there'd probably more people on the continent would watch it than perhaps they'd realise, but I think the problem is it's very difficult to market. It hasn't got the kind of some of the superstar names and the glamour names from like the Premier League does. When you've got Manchester United and Liverpool and teams like that, it's an easier product to sell. So I think that's why. But it should definitely get more coverage in the UK because there's thousands of probably millions of Leeds fans and Newcastle fans and stuff, not just in the UK but all around the world, would want to see their team a lot more.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, and as you say, I mean, you only have to look at the end of the Championship day, which, if you haven't heard last night's pod, our good pal Josh hosted with Ross as his guest. Bit of a switch around. You had Blackburn, Birmingham, and Nottingham Forest. It's three big names fighting out for relegation in the Championship. So it is a huge league, and of course the playoffs are up and coming soon as well. So we will cover those on the English Breakfast, of course. So yeah, good question. That five-a-side team in Italy.
I did see this earlier, so I had a little think about it. So I thought Pepe Reina's probably the best goalkeeper to have in terms for a five-a-side. He's very quick with his distribution. Bonucci at the back because he can go on mazy runs and score ridiculous goals. Pjanic would be another one, very neat and tidy on the ball. Dybala. And I was thinking, like, can you have an out-and-out striker? It's like, you can in a five-a-side, but it's not really good, so you've got to have it to a bit of a ball, a bit of skill, so I'm going to give it to my new favourite, Patrick Schick.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're on the Schick train.
Yeah, so lots and lots of flair, and Bonucci can do the defending, it's fun.
Fair enough. Yeah, I can't argue with that. Good question, that one. Mike Filetti, regular friend of the show. Hello, Mike. He wants to know who could you pair if you could pair a manager with any club to help them compete or improve, who would you choose and why? He says, P.S. if you say Allegri to Arsenal, I'll stop watching. I can see why he's gone there. It's a good question. That, I mean, I suppose we've mentioned it already, but Simeone and Inter it seems a good fit, doesn't it? As far as that goes. Any others? Barcelona, because obviously they're looking for a manager. Is there somebody you could pick an ideal fit for them, or anybody else you can think of?
I think Allegri to Barca would make quite a bit of sense, just because obviously he walked into a team that had a very solid defence, but I think tactically Juventus are very adaptable, and I don't think it's quite worked at Barcelona. There's kind of a split in, do you just go back to what Barca do and play that 4-3-3 and go back to using the youth academy and La Masia and all that kind of thing, and the traditional blueprint, which I think would work, don't get me wrong, but I think now, particularly the Champions League, you have to be a little bit more adaptable with your team, and I think Allegri shows that, so I think he'd be a good fit there. Speaking as an Arsenal fan, not that I'd want the football the whole time, but if we could get Simeone, or I don't know, Tony Pulis in just to teach us how to defend for a bit, that would be, that would be nice. I tell you what, actually, I would be really interested to see what an English manager would do in Italy. And it sounds a bit funny because I know it gets ridiculed a little bit, but Sam Allardyce is a manager who perhaps doesn't get all the praise he deserves, maybe toots his horn a little bit too much when he gets a result over a big team, but defensively, the way he drills a team, they are very, very impressive, and they always counter-attack very well when he uses wingers quite well, which is obviously something that Italian teams do like to do. So I'd be interested to see what he could do with a group of Italian defenders in SerieA. That would be an interesting look. Maybe he could take over at Palermo and sort them out.
Yeah, it would be interesting, wouldn't it? Just for banter, I mean, like Alan Pardew at Palermo.
Oh god!
For example, so just the sheer. I tell you, I'd quite like to see someone like I know it's a bit obvious, but like an Eddie Howe type of a young progressive English coach abroad would be really interesting. I mean, people have ridiculed Tony Adams, but I mean, at least he had the balls to give it a bash.
I think Eddie Howe in a team like Werder Bremen, you've seen how they've come up. Maybe Las Palmas in La Liga, quite an exciting team. Obviously gone on the slide a little bit, but teams that play exciting, expressive football. Sampdoria in Italy would be another one he could take over. I guess if you're PSG, you want a manager who's going to come in and sort out the Champions League performances, really get that final little finish. So maybe get Carlo back.
Oh yeah, that'd be lovely, wouldn't it? I'd also love to see. I know we've mocked them on this show many times. I'd love to see a proper manager at Valencia, with a proper, bring a club like that back to the glory days. And I genuinely don't know who the right fit would be. That's probably one for Joel, but somebody, a proper Valencian coach, or get one of their old players back, Angulo or something like that, to manage them. Would just be
the last shout I'd have for Barca would actually be Sarri from Napoli. Because he plays very, very nice football, so I think the Barca fans would be happy with that, and it is very fluid and it's quite Spanish in its in the attacking spirit. So, I think he'd do. It'd be interesting to see what he'd do over there. Yeah,
or again, Nelson Vivas anywhere. Fun. Imagine Mihailovic against Simeone. By the way, there's a thought.
Oh dear.
Wow. It's going to be interesting. Okay, good question that. Pat the Gooner at Rainsford 14, another newbie, I think. Does the size of the EPL, i.e. Premier League, the amounts of competitions played and the lack of winter break hamper English teams in the Champions League, i.e. jaded players? It's a big question that many people have asked. Do you think so? I mean, the argument is if we had a winter break, everyone would sod off to Dubai for a week. So is it really worth it?
I do think there's a difference between doing a tour and playing competitive games, and players who played in the Premier League and then played in other European leagues have all said that the winter break does help and gives them just a week off. As some of them, obviously, the Bundesliga has the longest one, but they have less teams in their league. So I think a winter break would help. The easiest one, to be honest, to do is just no League Cup. I know for some teams it's only like 1 or 2 games, but just it changes the congestion of fixtures, moves it around a little bit. And the other thing that would definitely help, not just English teams, would help everyone around Europe, is the bloody international friendlies that just get put in the worst time. If okay, fair enough, you do need to have them because I understand the international teams do have to play, but it seems to be the first. You have 2 fixtures in the Premier League, and then you have an international break, and it just completely breaks any kind of continuity you have in training and fitness and regimes and things like that. So yeah, I do think it's something that the Premier League, if they seriously want the teams in it to compete in the Champions League and have a push for winning it on a more consistent basis, then they've got to look at a winter break, or at least reducing the number of cup games. Maybe there's an argument for even bringing the Premier League teams or the higher seeded ones in a round later in the FA Cup as well. Might be another thing to help with the fixture congestion, because it is ridiculous sometimes you see the amount of games that people play. But I do agree that there is obviously the other side of it, that will teams then just use it as a marketing ploy. But I think competitive games in a tour is a very different thing.
Yes, it's the age-old argument, isn't it? I think the only way English clubs are going to get better in Europe is by them just stop being crap. I think that's the big issue.
Yeah, there is also the argument that recruitment seriously needs to be improved at a lot of the clubs.
Yeah, all jokes aside, a lot of it's about money and about the managers. And I think if you look at the Premier League, is there an argument to say we've got some of the best managers in the world over here? Probably. Have we got some of the best squads in the world over here? I would argue we don't right now. I mean, even you look at the Chelsea side that's about to win the Premier League over here, you wouldn't lay that squad out on paper and say it's a world-beating 11, would you, necessarily? It's just a very, very well-drilled Conte side. And I think you look at, like, Liverpool don't really have a centre-forward. Manchester City don't have a defence, full stop. Arsenal don't, well, let's just not go there. Manchester United, have £90-odd million worth of Paul Pogba and
he's not performing.
Not a lot else, let's be honest. They got some talented players, but there's not a huge amount there. So yeah, I would say Europe is still way ahead of us. So interesting. Okay. We will finish on this question, which is from our good friend Tom. Of course, Tom. Just to repeat, Tom, I haven't forgotten your blog, my friend. I promise I will get it done. I swear. It's just been a busy week for me, so I will get it up soon. He wants to know, which player in the title contending teams of your respective leagues do you think will be the biggest miss to their team if they were to leave in the summer, and the hardest to replace? This guy, seriously, his questions, they're just so good, aren't they? Thank you, Tom. So go on then, Italy. What's your answer and why there?
In terms for Juventus, obviously going to win the title. I think Bonucci is the hardest one to replace in that team. They've got Chiellini, obviously they've got Barzagli. Barzagli's 36 now. Chiellini is getting on a bit, but Bonucci is key in that defence. Just the way he can spray the ball out from the back, the reading of the game. Yes, obviously he has an amazing understanding, but to be able to find a centre back of his quality again would be really, really difficult. And whatever happens with Allegri, I think it's going to be built around Chiellini and Bonucci as two of the centre backs, because Barzagli is going to have to retire at some point. As for the chasing pack, I don't think Roma would have been anywhere this season without Edin Dzeko. He's been amazing. The goals he's scored is just ridiculous, and getting someone who's that consistent in front of goal is very difficult nowadays in Europe, because so many teams need a striker and there just aren't that many around. And I think for Napoli, the obvious choice would have been Dries Mertens, but I think their biggest miss and the player they're going to struggle in terms of replacing is actually going to be Marek Hamsik when he eventually leaves. Thought maybe Insigne might be able to play inside centrally, but I think just his size is the biggest problem, so that's why he plays out wide. And what Hamsik's done at that team is incredible. His assists, the goals he gets, his reading of the game, he just changes the tempo, completely controls it. Finding that kind of mercurial. He was one of the first kind of new age number 10s, I guess you would say. If you look at Mesut Ozil was a pure number 10, Hamsik was more of what you tend to see now, a Kevin De Bruyne type number 10, who's full of running energy, can win the ball back, score goals, make attacks, and do everything. More of a complete midfielder, who's just an assist machine. So yeah, they would be my ones.
Yeah, it's a really tough one to answer. I mean, the obvious one to answer is the Monaco guys, isn't it? I mean, that's the obvious answer I could give you. I mean, Mbappe is the big one, of course, for Monaco, but until this season, he wasn't, even a first choice pick, shall we say. I think Bernardo Silva arguably is going to be even harder to replace, but you could also say the same about Bakayoko. The two fullbacks. So Monaco's the obvious answer to give. I would just say that to level it out, I'll go down the PSG route. Marco Verratti, I think, is going to be the biggest miss for PSG this summer, because I do think he'll leave, and I just don't know who Paris Saint-Germain can go after to play in that position. I mean, can you think of anybody that could slide into that? I just can't.
Not really. I think.
See it, really.
I guess the one thing they've got is that Adrien Rabiot seems to be turning into the player everyone thought he was, which will be of some benefit. I'd argue that maybe Cavani might be harder to replace. Yeah, I know we said earlier, obviously, maybe it's an easier league to score in, but the number of goals he's got and how reliable he is for PSG. It's going to be difficult to find someone who can come straight in and do that up front. You think, I know PSG have got a lot of money to spend, but every club in Europe needs, top strikers. When you look around the leagues, there's a lot of teams looking for a top striker. So he would be very difficult to replace. But no, I agree. Verratti is a brilliant player, and I'm fingers crossed. I mean, I'd love to see him at Inter Milan, but it's never going to happen. So hopefully he joins Juventus, so I can at least watch him there.
Yeah. It's Oh, I lost you then. Are you back?
Yep.
Sorry, it all went fucking quiet then. Mm-hmm. I'll leave her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll leave her. Yeah, I agree. It's a really, really hard question. I mean, I'm glad we don't have to do Germany and Spain as well, because I don't know where we'd start. It's such a good question. And again, if you've got thoughts, Tom, I mean, let us know if there's specifics you could pick out. But I mean, I take your point on Rabiot, but he's not in Verratti's class.
No.
I just don't know. It's all right getting in, and I agree with you to a degree about the replacing Cavani thing. Yeah, I get that, but I think when you're PSG, you're set up, you'll get goals if you're a decent striker in that team. But Verratti just pulls all the strings, and is absolutely vital to that. I would chuck in one other name very quickly, Jean-Michel Seri at Nice. If he goes, I'll be very interested to see how they adapt, because he is key to everything they do in that team. So it's a very good question.
Just quick shouts for Germany and Spain. Obviously Drew and Joel aren't here, but in terms of Germany, if you look at Bayern, I'd argue that Lewandowski, I don't know where they're going to find a striker who's as consistent and gives as much to the team as he does, because some games it's not about him, it's about all the work he does off the ball, the players he drags around, and he gets kicked to pieces in games because he is the focal point. But his goal record is ridiculous. But also when Manuel Neuer eventually retires, I know everyone sort of thinks of, well, Bayern have the ball the entire game, it doesn't really matter, and the defence is really good anyway. But the advantage those big teams have, that Bayern have, and Juve and other big sides, is that if their defence is ever breached, they have amazing goalkeepers who keep those clean sheets for them. And what Neuer can do in terms of playing out from the back with the ball at his feet is incredible. And I suppose the obvious ones in Spain for Barca and Real Madrid is Ronaldo and Messi, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, but I can give you another one if you want one. I can offer you one.
Yeah.
We mentioned him, or I mentioned him earlier on. Diego Godin.
Oh yeah. That's a great shout. I think Iniesta is probably Barcelona have never replaced Xavi, have they? And Iniesta hasn't quite looked as good, and I think when he goes as well, it's going to be a tough thing. The thing at Barca you look at is Neymar, obviously, sort of the heir apparent to Messi, I guess. So they at least have that superstar. What Madrid will do when Ronaldo eventually leaves, I'm not sure. They've got a real star in Asensio, that's for sure, but he's a different kind of player. So they're the sort of the obvious names, I suppose, you chuck out for those teams.
Yeah, the top three, and I'm looking at the other clubs. I mean, most of them have got good squads as opposed to individual brilliance. But yeah, I think with Atletico, I think Godin. You could maybe argue Oblak as well.
Yes, yeah.
They lost him. I'm not sure where. I can't really remember what the reserve goalkeeper is like, but I don't think he's at that level. The only other one I could pick out Spain would be when Aymeric Laporte leaves Bilbao. I wonder if I know he's not elite level yet, but I think he's going to be a real star, and I wonder what that will do to the club if they don't have him in defence. But it's the only other example I could probably use at that level. And as for Barcelona and Real Madrid, I mean, Sergio Ramos maybe at Real Madrid.
Yeah, that would be a really big one as well. Yeah,
leadership alone.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good. Okay, super. Well, I think that will do us for tonight. I think that's a show. We've managed to cram out a good 2 hours nearly there, of maybe more actually, of content for you guys. So, and girls, of course. So thank you very much for tuning in. As with these 2-man shows with John and I, we just try and sort of fill as best we can. So if there is more information to come, we will, of course, keep you posted when we've got people coming in and coming out, etc. But yeah, we hope we've managed to entertain you for another week. And as usual, just a quick reminder: the old code CFSAW10 for our partners at classicfootballshirts.co.uk. Get yourself along, get yourself some merch. Summer's coming up soon. You want to have something nice to wear out, footballing orientated wise. They do all sorts of training gear as well as shirts themselves. So get along, see what you can find. As usual, you can follow us at the FH Podcast. We're on SoundCloud. We're on YouTube. You've got our website. You've got iTunes. We're all over the place. So have a look for us. Have a look at our website as well. Check out our recent Hipsters Choices and all the blogs. I will get Tom's blog up soon, I promise. And yeah, until then, keep your beard strong and your glasses trendy. Enjoy your football. And my thanks to John for joining me this evening. Thank you, John.
Cheers, Chris.
Good times, and we'll be back, as I say, this time next week. English Breakfast will return as well, with the Premier League only, of course, to discuss this week. So until then, we'll speak to you very soon. Keep it tuned, and thanks for downloading.